Captain, don't do this.
It's done.
What about my ship? You can't just leave her.
I have no intentions of leaving her, Doctor. I will take the Lewis and Clark to a safe distance, and then I will launch tech missiles at the event horizon until I'm satisfied she's vaporized. Fuck this ship. Mic drop.
The unfortunate thing is the ship fucks back.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Yep. Practically, he does.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Science Fiction Rendon. My name is Robert. So, who do we have here?
We're nameless. We're nameless. We're nameless.
Is it just me,
What was
or is
your
this
name
name on the
again?
show? Because I thought we had a My Name is Robert episode before.
My name is Captain Guts.
I am Miggs Angel, also known as Myiami.
With a Y
With
in
a
several
Y.
places.
With a Y in one place.
For why?
So, for
I
all
know,
of you
wow,
out
this is-
here,
I'm
Well,
Ray,
no more music.
aka the mad scientist.
the mad scientist, and we
Apparently.
have Captain Chaos, and with us, if you have probably seen previous episodes, you have you know this face. He is the creator of our science fiction remnant music, Miguel. How you doing, Miguel?
Doing good, Ming. How have you guys been? Everybody
Awesome.
chilling?
Oh yes, especially after this movie.
Oh no. it was
Definitely.
just hanging bacon bits throughout the whole movie.
Yummy.
I didn't think it fit your paradigm there, Admiral Happy Endings.
Well, you know, I keep on telling you guys, I'm a confusing guy.
He called you that.
You know, I thought the same thing too when I watched. I'm like, there's no way that Rob signed up to watch this movie.
Yeah, I love this movie, which is, you know, the confusing part of it. There's no happy endings.
Yeah, right. But on the pre-roll before we went live, I told him I had to watch Happy Tree Friends after it just to smile a little bit.
And by the way, everybody, go and check him out. He's on the bottom bar. You can see his IG, so you can find his content. Awesome music.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. And going
Why?
to
If
the
my music's
Spotify.
no.
Follow.
They call him Modesto.
Modesto.
I had to go watch some crazy anime afterwards to trying to cheer up after watching this.
Yeah. That movie was morbid.
Oh, nice.
Saw was like
Brutal
Saw
doesn't
was
cut
like
it as a
like a little
description.
teaser. Saw was PG-13 after watching that movie.
What about the Human Centipede?
Oh, that's one I would never watch. Like, you guys have blacklisted movies. That movie is blacklisted for me because if I watch that, I won't be able to sleep for weeks.
That's not blacklisted. That black kiss it.
No.
God.
Okay, so changing the subject. Do you
Moving
have
on.
anything for us? Oh my god. Yes. If you guys don't know yet, you should know by now that Captain Chaos just posted a video. I'm not going to post it here. Go find it. But maybe
It's in
Captain Chaos, can you
Instagram
tell us a little bit about that video.
And Twitter.
All I'm going to say, it involves ass cheeks.
It's on Twitter and Instagram. Go and check it out. Make it viral.
Yes. Yes. And Ray, do you have something for us before we move on to the next segment?
Yeah. So what's everybody been watching? Sci-fi related. I'll give you a hint. Oh, if I can ever get my phone to open. Oh, Jesus, technology! Stop being an ass. Okay, so this is a big hint about what I've been watching.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Who in here is not watching that? You guys not watching
Star Wars?
Gio and Miguel? Are you guys watching it? No?
What is that?
I don't know. It sounds like something samurai, but I'm not sure.
It's Mandalorian season 3, dude.
Mandalorian season 3.
Oh yeah, no, I haven't
Oh,
been watching. Bro.
I haven't watched it, no. Actually, I've been watching a lot of Event Horizon.
Funny that.
I've been watching the Matrix movies.
Well,
Oh, that's
you
true. I
know,
did watch The Matrix, the new one.
I can say
Well, the
I've
new
been
one's
watching, aside from Star Trek, which I'm still on the rewatch with a wife. We're watching The Mandalorian. And it's, yeah, I don't want to say anything because obviously I don't want to give you spoilers, but oh my God. The last
Nikki,
episode was
look at
He's been watching
so
Mandalorian related content. Boom, da boom, da boom, boom, boom.
you know that Mandalorian is Cuban. That's what they call it, Mando. Mando, Mandito, Mando.
With his wife, hint, hint.
wow.
Oye,
Oh,
a serio, Mandito, Mando.
so that, I guess that's our cue for our next segment. What do you think, Ray?
Shut up.
Yep.
Shut up.
Before
We are science
Shut up.
fiction.
This is the Funny Science Fiction Podcast.
We are the Caribbean Science Fiction Network.
We are Monorats.
We are One Accord Level 2 Podcast.
This is Jesse from Sudden But Inevitable and Open Pike Night.
This is Sci-Fi.
And for all of you out there who are listening to our show, you know what this is all about. We are trying to feature the hashtag This Is Sci-Fi. And the whole idea we're doing this is to provide a way for all sci-fi fans and sci-fi creators to come together under one hashtag and not only share the content they create, or for the fans to share the content that they love, but also for those out there who have not otherwise been experienced to the content that you're sharing, so they are aware of what's going on. And I've seen a lot of discovery, and this is actually the whole idea why that hashtag exists, is, you have been watching an IP and you finish that IP and you're now sad because you don't have another sci-fi to take its place. And following that hashtag, you will hear from other people who love what they are watching and get an idea of what they love, why they love what they love. And hopefully you get interested enough that you give it a chance, and you give a chance to that IP. And who knows, you might discover your next love in sci-fi. And I don't know if you guys have been following the hashtag, but this week, there's a lot of posts, obviously. I just want to feature one specifically, only because this one, it actually is on point on what we are trying to do with the hashtag. So if you remember our episode on Stagnant Waters, when we have the writer of the comic book on our show, we discussed the book. By the way, great comic book. If you guys have not read it yet, and the Kickstarter is out also, so I welcome everybody to go in and join that Kickstarter. That story is amazing, and I can't wait for the second book. But he posted to the This Is Sci-Fi hashtag, and I'm gonna read it for all of you out there who have not, actually looked at the post. It says, listen to the Return of the Jedi episode of Science Fiction Remnant now, and I'm on a Star Wars binge. I'm ashamed to say, as a Star Wars fan, I have never watched all of the Clone Wars. I started last night. Unfortunately, my whole manitis, what it is to grow old, kicked in, and he fell asleep during season episode 2. I think we're all been there. You're so tired, and you just fall asleep. But the reason why I'm pointing this out is, like, he's a Star Wars fan, and he has heard of the Clone Wars, but he's never really watched it. And it could be many reasons. I mean, shows typically, you could be within one IP, and nowadays we have IPs that have multiple shows and multiple movies about different stories within that IP. So it is understandable that you might follow, Star Trek, or you might follow Star Wars, and there's specific, show or specific movie within that franchise that you're not, it doesn't really call your attention, doesn't really call, and especially for Clone Wars, most people, it's a cartoon, and people have that reservation. By the way, I have no reservation for that is a great show, in my opinion. He never watched it, and he started watching it because of our comment on our show, especially on that episode. So this is a great thing. He's going to keep us posted, but you never know if you're going to discover your next favorite thing in this way. And that's the reason why I love this is sci-fi hashtag. You guys have any have you guys seen that post, by the way?
Oh yeah, I saw that one.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was great. One thing I just wanted to mention was that oftentimes the juxtaposition between the sort of the context of the original trilogy, which is 4, 5, and 6, and then the follow-up, which was the prequels, which was 1, 2, and 3, the fact that it goes back in time can throw people if they've started with the originals, but also the fact that the first 3 movies that were made were sort of an adventure story, whereas the next 3 that were made was a political thriller. So you sort of go from one style of storytelling to a completely different style, but it's still in the same IP. So that can throw people as well. They go in expecting, the fun of Star Wars and Rog, and they come out with a political, contemporary political thriller kind of sort of essay on why things went to shit in the Star Wars universe, and that may not interest them as much. So they sort of watch the first one and go, I'm really not getting this, and they sort of drop it by the second, or they don't get around to watching the third one. And that's a shame, because the third one has the real meat and potatoes of what Obi-Wan was talking about back in his house when he met up with Luke and the droids. So that's the sort of one you're waiting on. You've got to wade through 2 political thrillers to get to it. Yeah. So that kind of, it's a bit of a hurdle to jump over.
Yeah.
I think that's why a lot of people don't finish that trilogy.
Yeah, and I understand it. I mean, I do understand it. I'm a different case because for me,
you watch anything.
Well, for people listening out there, they think, oh, yeah, I watch anything and I like anything, right? Like, for example, when I said that I like all Matrix movies, that's like, oh my God, that's blasphemy. But if you hear me long enough, you know that the reason why, to me at least, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong.
He watches Dragon Ball live action movie.
The thing is, yeah. The thing is that when I watch this,
you like the live action movie. I go, what?
Well, to my defense, I watched that first.
You didn't know what you're missing. Yeah, at that
exactly. The same thing happened to me the last Airbender. I watched that movie first, so yeah, I didn't know what I was missing. But going back to what I was saying is that the reason why in my mind is because I like, for example, all the Matrix movies. That's one example that I can bring. To me, it's one whole long movie. So you can't really appreciate the good until you see the bad. And to me, it's all one story. And that's how I see, Star Trek. That's how I see Star Wars. That's how I see, how I would see Babylon 5 if I ever start watching it. But
if that's a big if.
But yeah,
there's always that if.
That's my point. But you guys, you're welcome to interact. And for you up there who are actually watching our YouTube, if you're not watching our YouTube, go watch the YouTube, because we occasionally show you stuff on the stream, and I'm not going to say a thing. You're just going to hear us laugh and not know what we're laughing about. So go ahead and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. You know how to do
us on Twitter. Join our Discord. And you can also call our hotline. Remember, when you call the hotline, we will play your message on the next episode. And that number is 1-305-563-6334. You call that number and we'll play your message on the air. So,
you sure they can really be called a hotline? Because I mean, we don't answer the phone. so it can't really be considered hot. I'd say lukewarm line.
You actually have two lines. So if you call the hot line, you get G on. If you call the cold line, you get Rob.
Fair enough.
Well, I would say.
And then he'll give you Star Wars quotes.
I would say I always answer Ray. Have you called the line?
I'd say lukewarm. I wouldn't say cold.
Let me see.
Oh no.
Welcome to the Science Fiction Remnant Message Hotline.
See, I always answer the phone.
Oh, okay. And you have background music.
You can
too.
actually
That's pretty
insult
impressive.
him and he wouldn't know.
Exactly.
The only one that actually has decent work ethic here is Rob. He answers the phone every
And exactly, you know, it's hard. It's really hard.
Calling
man,
very
because someone
important to
has
us.
to do it.
I want to know how you got Chat GPT to talk in your
Man of
voice.
the line.
Is that
Okay, hey Gio,
We doomed.
Gio, are we ready for your?
Shout out.
Shout out. Well, first
I
off, I
love
want to remember.
doing that to Gio.
I want to remember everybody. I want to remember everybody that we are members of the Blind Knowledge Network. So please go to blindknowledge.com. They have a great array of content. Anything that you like, I'm sure that you can find it over there. Go and have it. And you can find them on social media too: Twitter, Instagram. Actually, so the Fanfare. Go and check them out. Great service. If you actually need to do scripts of any kind for your product podcast, usually more than anything, but it can be adapted to many other things too. Products for companies and things like that. Go and check them out too. They're very useful. They're great service too, and great folks too. I definitely suggest their product, and it's a very accessible price actually. So go and check them out. And now we're gonna move to our for this week that we selected. The first one is gonna be James W. the writer. Go and check them out. He's actually the writer of Stagnant Waters. Great comic. Next one is Eric the Red, and his Twitter tag is Eric13Red. Also, we got Max the Surfer, and his tag is Max Surfer Li. That's not Li Lee. Okay. Pike, love open Pike. You guys gotta Pike actually there too, and Pike actually put it all together like that. Admiral Funnest Frontier, and Deck Lowers is their tag. Go check. This one I put a good supporter, but man, you have troublesome name. YouTube column Oreo Brewer, comma Wattpad with double T. Immortal Beloved A9. Oh, bro. I feel like a sense of achievement just by saying it. Go and check them out.
achievement unlocked?
Longest tag ever. But go and check him out. Actually, thank God, gratefully, his tag is not that long. It's SWTheDrakenSaga. Go and check him out. Actually, grateful too. Also, fuck 1717, and his tag is THOKK1717. Go and check them out. And last but not least, a podcast that we love, also participating with them and listening to them, the podcast that wouldn't die. And their tag is T Podcast TW Die. Go and check them out, and those will be our shout outs for today.
It wouldn't die, man. It just wouldn't die.
No, it doesn't die, bro. Can't get rid of him, man.
I hit it with stick, it wouldn't die.
Not that I'm trying.
Rumor has it that he's still alive.
He wouldn't die.
Great podcast, man. I listen, and you know, I always say in the show, I don't like horror, as you all know this. And
Really?
Sorry, what movie are we doing?
Sorry,
I got bullshit. Call bullshit on
I
that.
don't like. I
They
don't
said
like
that
horror.
See the
makes the
hanging
rule?
pieces of meat skin?
I don't like horror, but I like that podcast.
For a second, I thought that we were watching the food channel for cannibals.
Oh my
This
God.
movie.
Corpse Popsicle.
Damn.
Okay.
Literally,
Copsicle.
mid popsicles being made. Mid
Careful,
popsicles on the making.
Careful what you
Copsicle.
say now. They're watching.
Okay, so are we ready for the next segment?
Yeah.
The outer remnant.
I got one.
I got one.
Yeah, I got one. Yeah, so pretty much everybody who's listened to any of our other podcasts would know that I'm one of the live stream hosts for the Elite Army's channel Radio Chaos, which is on YouTube. We had episode 157 of Radio Chaos this week, which was following through the manga. So it was Gumu Volume 4, Chapter 4, Outsider, Race 4, Mystery Dance, which is basically the lead up to the big battle between Alita and her hand-picked group of second rankers versus Emperor Jushigan, who's the best player. And of course, they've all got their poker faces on getting ready for the big battle, but there's a whole bunch of stuff going on behind the scenes with Ajikati calling Alita out for being an outsider and not being dedicated to motorball because she's stopping playing motorball after this battle / race. And Jushigan's basically dying, and this will be his last fight before his brain gives up. So they've all got some issues to deal with, but they're all getting ready to fight in front of the crowds for the glory that is motorball. So that's what we were going through this week.
Awesome. Okay, so are we ready to talk about the happy ending that it is?
What? What was happy about that? Man,
It was so happy that I forgot what the ending was, and I watched it right before getting on the podcast.
They live happily ever after.
to
The
escape,
whole
but
movie
not
I
with
thought
their
about
sanity.
the
to
whole
escape,
movie I thought about death.
Fair enough too.
Okay, so I guess I'll start the section with a question that I always ask. When was the first time you watched this movie, and what was your first impression? So
You want to go ahead, Ray?
Oh, sure. So I saw this in cinemas in '97, being a 20-something back then. You know, I was into sci-fi. I didn't mind a bit of horror thrown in. I went to the cinema specifically to see this because the poster looks so goddamn awesome. So let me see if I can just pull that up really quickly.
What year did you go watch it? In '97?
97. Yeah.
Damn, son.
In 97. Yeah, I'm an old fart. You get that. Let me just.
I was 7 years old.
And they didn't let you watch a movie?
So imagine you're walking past the cinema and you see this poster. Being a sci-fi fan, are you going to go see that?
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to go see that.
Oh, heck
I
yeah.
went and saw that.
Infinite space, infinite terror.
Heck yeah.
And, you know, Event Horizon, I mean, we didn't back then in 97, we didn't know nearly as much about black holes as we do now. And, you know, the black holes were just one of those amazing sort of far off things that were, you know, Pike the imagination, and you just wanted to, you know, explore what this could possibly mean. And I was actually quite surprised how deep this movie was. It was a lot. There was a lot more to it than I was expecting. Which it's a shame that it didn't do so well at the box office. Actually,
Yeah.
It had a budget of 60 million, which is not a lot these days, but back then it was a fair bit of money. But it only did 42 million at the box office. So maybe it was the advertising wasn't so great. Maybe, you know, the sci-fi horror niche wasn't as populated with fans as it is these days. But yeah, it didn't do so well at the cinema, but it has become a cult classic from during home release. I know that it's there's a lot more fans of it now than there was at the time. So Yeah, but it's a really tight movie from the opening music, which, you know, I forget a lot of things about these movies. Like, there's a few little pointers that you remember, like some of the quippy lines or the design of the spaceship or what have you, and you haven't seen it for 10 years or something. You go back and watch it and go, was this music always this good? I mean, the music at the very beginning just it just pumps you up and it gets you going. And I mean, you get a lot of sci-fi that's a bit fuzzy. Like, they just sort of the term technobabble, which, you know, was coined for Star Trek. There's technobabble in it, but all of it seems quite logical. There's no real sort of, I mean, we're sort of waffles on a little bit about how the gravity drive works, because, you know, it's all very complicated. And I go, you know, use simple language, man. Do you speak English? So, yeah, I mean, the technobabble in it hangs together really well, and it just really feels grounded and possible. And I find that a movie, when it feels really, really possible, it has a lot more impact than these really sort of fluffy, making shit up as you go along sort of movies. So I think the horror in this movie hits harder because it feels far more possible than a lot of other horror sci-fis.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I also saw this movie at the theaters, and many times after that. And I think the reason why I like this movie, I actually kind of mentioned that during our recording on the movie Alien, and it's because it's at the time it was very hard to find when a science fiction IP kind of delves into other genres, right? And just like Alien, this is a sci-fi that also has not only horror, but it also has a thriller aspect within. And I really love how, I mean, I'm not saying that it has to be sci-fi and horror and thriller. It could be sci-fi comedy. It could be, but the more genres you add to a sci-fi movie, the more I'm going to love it. Now, the visuals, the movie itself, you know, I like to think scientifically, although I'm not a scientist, and I keep on repeating that in every episode. And watching this movie, every time I watch it under those lenses, it's usually a WTF moment. So I don't know if if you guys there you go. Because I try to make sense of everything that goes on, and it doesn't always make sense, and it's not supposed to make sense. It is a sci-fi movie. But this movie has made the impression on me, the same impression that the movie Alien has made on me, and one of the reasons why I really enjoy this film. Granted, it's not within the type of films that I like, nor is Alien. That you guys think that I would like. I don't like when movies, the main characters die, and where in Alien they didn't. But going under that rationality for me, in my perspective, I can't really, even today after a rewatch, and I have watched this movie many times, I don't think I can pinpoint a main character in this movie. And this is another thing that I find very, very good about this film, is that typically when you watch a film, you want to watch a film and you want to identify with a character or a group of characters. And one of the things, and I don't know, if I'm kind of curious to hear your thoughts on that. And one of the great things about this film is the fact that you watch the entire film and you can't identify that one character that you identify with, because it's the entire crew that you're after.
It's an ensemble cast, and it's executed very well. I agree with you.
Yeah, because like if you look at Alien, for example, it's Ripley. So you follow Ripley throughout, and at the end, she's alive. Perfect happy ending for me, right? But
I thought it was the cat. I thought you would follow the cat.
But in this film, there's not one person; it's the crew, and it's very refreshing when a movie can do that. And I don't think I can recall many movies that they can actually do that. Gio and Miguel, I don't know who wants to go first. When was the first time that you watched it? Meaning, like, how old were you, or if you can recall, and what was
I
the first
was
impression?
I was like 7, 8. 7, 8, terrified. 7 or 8 years old. Terrified to my
Oh,
death.
no.
Oh my freaking God. 7, are you serious?
Yeah, that's a little early.
Wow.
Yeah, it fucked me up in the mind, bro. I couldn't sleep for a week. A week. I didn't want to go to outer space. Like, come on, go, boys.
Wow. Oh, I like that.
The first time the first time that I watched it was probably about 3 hours ago. And to be honest, like, I know that's not a long time ago, but I like to connect movies to society, and seeing that this movie came back in '97 to now, like, we've actually confirmed that you can bend time and space.
Yeah.
It's that now we're building the technology to actually do it.
Mhm.
So we know that it's possible. Quantum physics has proven that it can be done.
Mhm.
But if you guys, and I'll let the podcast viewers do a little bit of their own research, but look up Bob Lazar, and he's worked on the chemical compound to actually get this going back in the day, and it's still a process going on. So the technology is not quite there, but we've proven through quantum physics that we can actually do this.
It's
I love
interesting.
everything Bob Lazar, actually, bro.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because one of the things that I find fascinating, it's seeing the scientific lens when this movie came out in '97 versus what we know now. And we're actually talking about two separate modes of transportation. Well, actually, technically three, if you think about it. So we're talking about quantum transportation. We're talking about warp drive, and we're talking about wormholes as a mode of transportation using a black hole. So it's really, really cool to me. And I don't know what Ray's thought would be on this, but it was really cool to me to see how the explanation for this, it kind of merged into one, when to me they were talking about three separate things and not new. I don't know if it was, for all I know, that information was available, right? Because these technologies and the research for these technologies have been going out for years, right? So it's probably how mainstream that information was about the scientists, on how the writer of this movie kind of makes all those three, like if it was talking about one particular thing. And for all I know, this is a sci-fi film, right? So it's not real. It's not factual scientific. So for all I know, in this film, all three methods of transportation do combine into one. But listening to that, it's like really fascinating to me how they're talking about these three things as a single thing. What do you think, Ray? I mean, am I the only? I mean, I shouldn't ask this. I'm usually the only one thinking about this stuff. But what is your thought about that, Ray? I had to defer to the mad scientist,
Well, I'm no physicist, so I'm not really qualified to comment. I have to rely on other people's research. But the whole thing about science is that science, what we know now is what we know now, and what we'll know in the future is going to be far more than what we know now. So anything that we believe is not possible now is just waiting to be proven wrong. So, and that's basically how science works. If something is postulated and can be examined and be said to hold true for a certain number of instances, and then it can't be disproven for a certain amount of time, it becomes taken as plausible. And then a bit long, you wait a bit longer, and if it's still not disproven, it becomes a scientific fact in inverted commas, because a scientific fact is only a scientific fact until it's proven otherwise. So basically, And the example I give every time is when my father went to high school, he was taught in physics that the smallest particle of matter was the atom. And then less than 10 years later, they split the atom. And now we have all sorts of subatomic particles and all sorts of funky stuff going on with, linked particles and quantum teleportation and all this sort of stuff, which was completely unknown when my father went to school. And if you think about the existence of civilization, which is about 10,000 years, this is one generation.
Yes.
And we've gone from, atoms are the smallest particle of matter to quantum teleportation and possibly folding space and all this. So we are discovering new things about the universe. It's such a speed now compared to the rest of human history. And it's amazing. And I just hope that we don't destroy ourselves before we can discover all sorts of funky shit. Because, that's quite possible as well. Because the more you know, the more you can fuck up. So,
Oh, yes.
but I mean, humankind has managed not to nuke itself into oblivion in the last 70 years, which I'm kind of impressed about. We've gone close a few times. Yeah. But the fear of destroying everything has been enough. People think that the huge amount of money that has been spent on nuclear weapons in the past 70 years has been a waste of money, but not really. We haven't had a world war since nukes were invented. There's a reason for that, because nukes were invented. So, horrific weaponry can be a deterrent and stop you from having massive world wars and things like that. It can make people stop and think a little longer. So it does have a useful purpose, sort of adjacent to its horrific primary purpose. So, and
it has scientific significance too. For example, I was listening to one of the episodes, by the way, if you don't listen to Star Talk, Neil deGrasse Tyson, I was listening to an episode that he says that we have discovered a lot more about our Earth and the seismic activity from the testing sites of atomic bombs. So something it's kind of like, I guess it's looking at the whole thing with a silver lining, that we have such a horrendous weapon that actually has helped science improve. And that's, that's a good thing, I guess, that comes from the whole horrific thing.
Well, yeah, there's multiple sides of all those sorts of things. If you look back at what the Nazis did to the Jews in World War II, it was horrific. But they pushed medical science along quite significantly in the fields of, like blood transfusion and all sorts of other things that they experimented on these poor people with. But that knowledge provides help and saves lives every day.
Yeah.
So, it's horrible it was done, but millions of people have survived thanks to it. So, there's two sides of every single coin.
But Ray, you know what we did forget?
The plot. There was a plot. I know there was a plot there somewhere.
It always happens here in this show. It always
not always. If we're really interested in the IP, like if it's something that's deeply ingrained within us, we start talking about it. We can't wait till the plot. Anyway, I'll knock out the plot here while Gio's off getting a beer or something.
You came back.
In 2047, I'm glad. If you're in this movie, that wouldn't necessarily be the case.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna be like a nice what would you call it? Like a rug opening the roof. A rug opening the roof.
Don't you want to be the corpsicle?
Yeah, me popsicle.
No, I'm gonna be like a collector's mane on the wall.
Wow. Okay. Moving on.
In 2047, so we haven't got there yet, but we will probably next week sometime. A distress signal is received from the Event Horizon, a starship that disappeared during its maiden voyage to Proxima Centauri 7 years earlier. The ship mysteriously reappears in a decaying orbit around Neptune, and the rescue vessel Lewis and Clark is dispatched to investigate. The crew, Captain Miller, second in command, Lieutenant Strack, Pilot Smith, Medical Technician Peters, Engineer Ensign Justin, Dr. DJ, and Rescue Technician Cooper, is joined by Dr. William Weir, the Event Horizon's designer. He briefs them on the ship's experimental gravity drive with a simple visualization of how it folds space-time. The distress signal consists of a series of screams and howls that DJ believes he hears the Latin phrase liberate me, which means save me in English. Upon boarding the Event Horizon, the crew finds evidence of a massacre. As they search for survivors, the ship's gravity drive activates and briefly pulls Justin into a portal, while also causing a shockwave that damages the Lewis and Clark. The crew are all forced to board the Event Horizon while Justin emerges in a catatonic state. He attempts suicide by decompression but is saved by Miller, forcing the crew to place Justin in stasis. Smith and Cooper are sent on a spacewalk to repair the hull of the Lewis and Clark. I should also mention that they've got 20 hours of breathable air left before they have to leave. So,
As if that wasn't much problems.
yeah, as if you didn't have enough problems. The crew begins having hallucinations corresponding to their fears and regrets. Miller sees a subordinate he was forced to abandon to his death. Peter sees the son of his his legs covered in bloody lesions. Weir sees an eyeless version of his late wife urging him to join her. She actually committed suicide because he was married to his work, basically, and ignored her, and she ended up killing herself.
I have a question. The way that he got hurt when he got spaced out, that's not supposed to happen like that. I think that they did that to make it look more bloody and horrific, right?
I can explain that. I can explain that.
And I mean, on top of that, you could hear his scream on outer space. Like, that's not true. I was
well,
like, did I just hear him screaming? No.
It looked like the
he should have burned. Not like
the airlock didn't completely decompress because there was a little bit of gas that went out with him. So that would have given some molecules for the sound to vibrate through. But yeah, I mean, the very first opening scene, you could hear the lightning and the rumble from the ship outside the ship in space. So that was,
I can, if you like, I can actually speak to that because I did some research on this.
Enlighten me, please.
Okay, I did some research. Number one, let me start by saying that what you saw in the movie is fiction. Straight out fiction.
Yeah, I know.
Because the first time, just like
you don't say.
Just like you, the first time that I saw this, I was like, no. So here's the thing, right? For all of you out there who don't know, it only takes about 15 seconds in the vacuum of space for you to pass out, right? But it takes 90 seconds for you to actually die of asphyxiation, right? So just have that in mind, right? I actually timed it when the door opened, and I started the timer. And when the door closed, after he went back inside, the door closed, I timed it. It was a total of 21 seconds, right? So from 9 to 12 seconds.
Yeah.
The deoxygenated blood reaches your brain, and that's the reason why you pass out after 12 to 15 seconds. Exposure to the vacuum would take up to 30 seconds to cause permanent damage. There you go. If you're not subscribed to YouTube, you're not going to know what's going to happen here. So it takes 30 seconds for the vacuum space, to start causing permanent damage, right? So just have that in mind. It takes 30 seconds. I timed it to 21 seconds, and he looked like he came out of a meat grinder.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing that made it a little bit like I felt like they did that because it was horror thriller mind job movie.
Yes.
But I think that he should have just burned, like his eyeballs will get like very red and dark because it would start burning up, and he would actually get burned because of the lack of temperature. So his blood would have boiled eventually,
No,
right?
but here's the thing. I actually researched on that too, because I'm thinking, okay, we see blood coming out of his eyeballs. We see, you know,
Out of everywhere in his body, actually, like his
exactly.
arteries were like popping off.
Let me read something that I seen here. The actual vacuum
Okay.
exposure has shown that even 20 to 30 minutes, not seconds, of exposure do not
Oh.
result in external bleeding.
Wow, there you go.
And that has been
Yeah,
proven
I
because
don't even remember me. That shouldn't have happened, but I think it's just the addition to the movie and the goriness.
Yeah, I've always heard more that you
it's-
implode, you don't explode.
well, you know,
Well, in
you
outer space, you don't really implode. You just burn, like your
yeah,
body burns up, and then you just like you don't decompose that fast, right?
your body boils. I mean, your blood boils, and in the air, you better let go of your air, because the air
Yeah.
it will
your
be pushed
lungs.
out. You know, but it's not what people
Yeah.
imagine
That could
that it would be.
could have been in the air on his lungs. That could have created also that internal damage, but still, like that would have killed
It
him
wouldn't
by
be that
trauma,
way.
right?
It wouldn't be like that. And especially
No, right?
the
Yeah,
blood
that's what I
vessels.
thought.
I mean, what do you think, Ray? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
talking a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah, I was going to say that you didn't count the time he was depressurizing in the airlock, so that was extra time where he was being exposed to lesser pressure than atmospheric. So the thing about a human body is that it's designed so that, it's evolved within the atmosphere. So there's a certain amount of pressure from all the molecules of gas that's piled up on top of us. I mean, you walk around and you can wave your arms and you can feel something. You can feel the air as you, like I'm waving my arms around now and I can feel something moving past my skin. That is the molecules of gas in the air, right?
Christina.
It actually has a weight. And that weight
We're
is
like
sitting on
fish.
top of us. There's a weight on top of us, and because it's beside us, it's pressing in and down on us. So there's a certain amount of pressure. It's one atmosphere on us all the time at sea level, right? As you go up into the mountains, it gets less because there's more below you than there was above you. So you get lightheaded because there's less pressure, right? And there's less oxygen within that gas to provide you oxygen. So you get lightheaded because you're not getting enough oxygen.
True.
But
True.
because we've evolved within one atmosphere of pressure, we have one atmosphere of pressure pushing out so that the atmosphere of pressure pushing in doesn't squish us, doesn't squish anything. Our eyeballs don't get squished in or anything like that because there's one atmosphere of pressure pushing out as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way creatures evolve, so that they survive perfectly comfortably within their environment, which is one atmosphere of gas pressure. You reduce that and suddenly the pressure pushing out doesn't have the pressure pushing in on it anymore. So that's why they're sort of postulating that, you know, the pressure of the blood and everything will burst out. And that's where they get the idea that, you know, your veins will start pushing out and you'll get lesions and you'll start bleeding because there's more pressure within your body than there is without. And that pressure is trying to escape. It's always trying to move towards equilibrium. And when there's no pressure outside, the pressure inside tries to get out.
There's proven. I mean, in this example that I was mentioning, there was a skydiver, Joseph Kittinger, that was exposed to near.
Oh, Joe Kittinger, yeah.
It was exposed.
Oh my God.
Near.
You know who that is, right?
It was near vacuum for the extended period due to a loss of glove during the skydive from space. His hand swelled and had bruising
with a
upon
helium balloon,
return
bro.
to the surface. It took about 3 hours for his hand to go back to normal. but there was no bleeding. There was only bruising.
Yeah, well,
Mhm.
that's because the skin has a certain amount of resistance. It's not like the skin is tissue paper.
67, I
skin-
think, to CA.
Our skin and our arteries and our veins
Skydive
and all
for
that
the edge
has
of
a
space.
certain amount of strength. But yeah, the pressure is trying to get to the area of least resistance and get away. So that's why his hand swelled up. So you could expect some swelling and bruising, but it would take time. It wouldn't be as exciting as what they show in this movie. So yeah, basically you're right.
Exciting.
It was played up. It was played up. But
Yeah.
also the surface of your skin would freeze.
Yes.
At least on one side
Yes.
of your body. If you're exposed to sunlight on the other side of your body, you would go up to hundreds and hundreds of degrees and fry,
Mhm.
and the other side would freeze
Right.
because the thermal difference between the lit side and the unlit side of things in space is pretty significant.
Yeah.
But I think
yeah,
that
I mean,
that it plays out to like mostly like his body would lose color probably, because he also like it's way slower, if not only nearly impossible. I think there's only one bacteria that can coexist on outer space, right?
I think tardigrades can survive
Tardigrade.
vacuum.
Yeah, it looks like a little worm with like a mouth and like two little arms. Yeah, so he can survive in the vacuum space. That's the only thing that can survive over there. So even the bodies don't pulse, they just burn up. And it figures what, because I mean, I don't know if it happens to you guys, like sometimes like you choke or something and you cough so hard you see like little colored dots on the eyes. That's like of oxygen on your brain too, that you get lightheaded too.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't recommend undergoing explosive decompression.
No.
Not good for
sure
you.
not. I believe so. I believe so.
At least,
Anyway,
at least to this day, it's not good for you.
To this day, I hope that changes.
Plot,
Can we get back to the plot?
Yeah,
we kind of got sidetracked there.
We should go back to the.
Holy crap! Where did I
As
get
always.
up to? Okay.
What do we say, Ray? Train in the rails, boat in the water.
Yeah, pretty much.
No, like boat in the rails, train in the water.
Mm-hmm. Rails, where we're going, we don't have rails.
Yeah.
bruh.
Okay, so the crew begin having hallucinations corresponding to their fears and regrets. Miller sees a subordinate he was forced to abandon to his death in a fire in space. Peter sees his son with legs covered in bloody lesions. Weir sees an eyeless version of his late wife urging him to join her. They discover video logs of the Event Horizon's crew fornicating and mutilating each other shortly after first engaging the gravity drive. The log ends with a shot of the Event Horizon's captain holding his own eyes gouged out from their sockets and speaking the Latin phrase from the earlier distress call. DJ translates the complete phrase as "Liberate tutame ex inferis," save yourself from hell, rather than save me. Weir explains that the ship's drive opened a gateway to a hellish dimension outside the known universe and that the Event Horizon has attained sentience. Miller decides to destroy it and orders evacuation, while Peters is lured to her death by hallucinations of her son down in the gravity drive chamber. Weir, who has gouged out his own eyes and has been possessed by an evil presence, destroys the Lewis and Clark and kills Smith. Weir then kills DJ by vivisecting him, nice guy, and corners Stark on the bridge. Miller confronts Weir, who overpowers him and initiates a 10-minute countdown to activate the gravity drive and return to the other dimension. Cooper uses his spacesuit's oxygen supply to propel himself back to the ship and appears at the bridge window. Weir shoots at him with one of those things that they use to repair the hull, and he shatters the window, causing Weir to be blown into space by the decompression. Miller, Stark, and Cooper survive and manage to seal off the ship's bridge. With their own ship destroyed, Miller plans to split the Event Horizon with explosives and use the forward section as a lifeboat. He's attacked by hallucinations, which turn out to be the resurrected and further mutilated Weir. Miller fights him off and detonates the explosives, sacrificing himself. The gravity drive activates, pulling the ship's stern section into a black hole. Strack and Cooper enter stasis besides a comatose Justin and waits to be rescued. 72 days later, the wreck of the Event Horizon is boarded and rescued by a rescue party who discover the survivors in stasis. Strack sees Weir posing as one of the rescuers and screams in terror, but wakes up and realizes it was a nightmare. Or was it? Cooper and the rescue team try to calm the terrified Strack as the doors close. Why did the doors close? Roll credits.
I was going to ask about that.
It wasn't a nightmare.
Did the Event Horizon actually ended there, or did it just begin?
Maybe there was plans for a sequel.
Yeah. What do you guys think about that ending?
I mean, there was a part in the movie where her name is Peters, right?
Yeah.
Right. Where she was telling the captain that there's like these in the air, like these bioorganic particles or whatever.
Yes.
That she was saying that when that pretty much if they're lingering in the air and they make you see these things. So I wouldn't be surprised if those things, the whole ship is infested by it, because when they scanned the ship, there was life form everywhere, even though there was nobody in the ship.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if the main capsule of the Event Horizon, when it broke off, it still contained that in it.
Mm-hmm. It makes a lot of sense, actually. Think about it. Like, if you think about it, what?
But they played it really well, because if you think about it, parts of the ship decompressed, and it wasn't like a solid seal decompression. Which typically, when that happens in a ship, the immediate doors to the decompression area would actually close down. So we saw a moment where the doors to the decompression areas were kept open. So you kind of wonder, at least this is my reasoning behind it, if that was enough time for all those particles to leave the ship due to the vacuum of space, or do we have enough in it? Or maybe they were weak enough that we don't notice, but they're still there.
They were probably living inside of them.
That too.
Well, if you think about it, if the ship is sentient, and the sentience is contained within those particles, then people are breathing them in. They're going to get inside their bodies, and that's probably how it was affecting their brains and making them see things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say a lot of it would get sucked out into space with the decompression.
Would you're the biologist, Ray? Would you say that it's some kind of like a contagion that behaves like a hive type of form of life? That is spread like in a form of spore?
I mean, all of these sorts of things are theoretically possible. I couldn't explain it to you because it's fiction. But I mean,
no, I know. But like, can you think of something more plausible than that, per se? For example,
no, I think that's quite plausible. I don't think that there's a particular great hole in it. My query was, once the gravity drive activates and the back of the ship returns to the hell dimension, would the front of the ship continue to be sentient and living, or would those things die off because they didn't have a link back to their dimension anymore? So my thought is that maybe after 72 days the ship was clear, and maybe the only place that those things are living now is inside the bodies of the people who survived. So
I have a hypothesis for that. I have a hypothesis that would actually support my way of thinking of what it is. So I'm saying that it's some kind of a hive form of life, right? That means that there's one brain, one master brain. So if the head, or where the black orb was, where that lies on, and you severed it, then it's gone. Like, it's going through a black hole because you severed where the hive brain was. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I also have a different point of view that might be slightly different. Again, none of these hypotheses are either right or wrong. It's just our way of thinking. And all of you out there listening, if you have a specific view, I invite you to share on Twitter, and let's start that conversation. But I'm also thinking that these, let's say, for example, that is not a hive, like a hive brain. Let's assume that all these particles are individual. Let's assume this for a minute. Since the beginning of this whole ordeal, when we discover what was inside the ship and what was actually going on, we notice that they want to get back. It is a overwhelming desire to get back to their dimension, right? And that's why they were doing all this stuff. They were killing the crew. Whenever they're trying to like take the ship back, they do something that it will prevent it, including the detonation and of the Lewis and Clark. So my thought is this: when the other half of the event horizon went back to its dimension, the other ones that stayed behind wanted to go back as well. So I would think that they would actually leave that ship as it actually travels out towards Earth, because this entity wants to get back. So in my thought, maybe at the end of this movie, all this, whatever it is, the entity is actually in Neptune waiting for that hole to get back so they can get back to their dimension while they clear out the ship as it leaves the vicinity of the planet. But that's just my thought on this, what's happening.
What if it exists in another dimension?
Exactly.
So that means that's why. Well, I'm playing for quantum physics to develop a little bit more, because I think that's what's gonna develop the science of the soul or the metaphysical things. But what if actually that's why she's having nightmares or something? Is because this thing is somehow still connected to her, anyways.
Well, you bring
I
a really
noticed
good
that
point.
A lot of these movies that. Oh, go ahead, Rob. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say we talked about this in in many movies after our episode on Arrival. For all we know,
Yeah,
this
you're gonna like
entity
that
could
movie.
be. They're talking about a different dimension too within this movie, so it is very plausible for this entity to be a higher dimensional being. So they could be in their dimension and our dimension at the same time, because it's plausible. So it is possible that this whole thing is one single entity, and they're still taking a hold of those two survivors that got rescued. If you think about it that way.
Is Arrival the one where they're on the spaceship and then like they see like demons, they see like Satan, or they go to the sun?
No.
What movie am I thinking of?
Do you know
Arrival
what he's
is-
talking about, Robert? No, but the one that
Mars.
he's saying, like demons and going to the sun.
Yeah, they just send the ship straight to the sun.
I think it's called
very similar
Sunshine?
in
Daylight.
I think it's called Sunshine, isn't it? I think you're talking about Sunshine.
He probably has watched it. I haven't watched it.
I don't remember, but it's a very similar where they're the spaceship is going straight to the sun, like the ship just gets taken over by this. It's literally Satan takes over the ship.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, and so he wants to drive the ship into the sun because he doesn't want them in that area or something like that. So,
Going back home.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so it's a very similar plot, but I find it kind of interesting how like all the movies tying together to some of this paranormal stuff.
Yeah,
you know?
Arrival is about like a race of beings that come from another dimension. So like giant ships just like materialize instead of just landing.
Okay.
And the extraterrestrial forms actually they're called hectapods, and literally like they are so big you cannot really see. And basically they have what, like 5 tentacles? They're standing over him.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Basically,
Yeah.
because they're from another dimension. Because you know that time is also a dimension. It's just that our lifespan makes it look like linear. So basically, they can experience the future, the present, and the past all at once. So they know what was, what is, and what will be. That's why they came and visiting. And it's all about like them trying to warn humans, but like humans need to learn how to communicate with them because it's a totally different linguistic system. It's super interesting. They make a whole new language for this thing. Robert and I started like looking at it and how it was made. It's super interesting, man. Like the concept of time, how they play it out, and everything. Oh wow, you gotta
If
love
you
that movie.
have not
Super
listened to
brainy.
that episode, you should download it now. We had a lot of fun with that episode, and there's so much. This movie is one of those that should have been blacklisted because there's a lot of content. And as a matter of fact, Gio, you tell me if you agree with this or not. If we do a second part to that movie, we still have stuff to talk about.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That movie's. I mean, it's just, it goes too much in depth about too many existential and scientifical aspects of reality. And I mean, I think that we can make a promise like as soon as we have something better on what on the fields of quantum physics, which is what I'm waiting on. I think that quantum physics is gonna revolutionize humanity as a whole. It's gonna like flip the whole thing out. It's gonna open a can of worm, bro. I'm telling you.
Well,
There's
that's what
already
I'm
a
afraid
book
of.
written about it. If you look up Eric, not Eric Weinstein himself. Eric Weinstein is a biologist, but his brother wrote a book. It's called the relativity of everything.
Oh, I think I've seen it, but let me write it down.
So, yeah, go check that out.
Yes. So going back to
It
this,
ties in quantum physics and string theory.
Yeah. Can I just add something before we move on too much further? In the development of the story, they originally were going to have tentacle aliens, and that cross the from the threshold of their planet to or dimension, and it was the story was going to resemble Alien, but then they said it was very dense and the story was a bit lost. So then they went back towards a more sort of haunted house in space sort of shtick that they were working on. But Screenwriter, I'm reading this straight off of Wikipedia, by the way, but screenwriter Philip Eisner acknowledged that Warhammer 40,000 influenced the story. Now, if anybody knows the lore around Warhammer 40,000, spaceships travel the galaxy by passing through another dimension called the Warp. And it's full of chaos creatures. And basically, fans consider Event Horizon to be an unofficial prequel to Warhammer 40,000, where humankind discovers the warp and learns the dangers the hard way. So it's an interesting link to that IP, which has a lot of books written about it now. There's hundreds of the bastards. I've read probably half of them.
Yeah, that's a great thing about some of the IPs. There's a lot of content, so just have to be able to give a chance to a different type of media. I mean, media spans across books and even games. Some games actually expand on the IP.
Oh, for sure.
So.
Yeah, when I was watching this movie, I was telling you earlier, it reminded me of a lot of I never played Dead Space, but I watched a friend of mine play it.
Oh god.
And it's kind of like this same idea where they have this thing called the marker, right? And then these particles go out and they infect people but more in like an alien kind of way. It biologically mutates them into and their bones change, and it's a very like gorish game, and it's interesting to me. Like every time you watch something or something like in that realm, you always have this one thing that always wants to its destination, and the humans never let it. There was another movie that I think it was Ad Astra. Was it Ad Astra? No. There was another movie that I saw that was like with this computer. I'm sorry, I don't remember the titles, but computer that was this girl in a control room, and the computer was trying to tell her something, but it was fake all the time. Like the computer was a surveillance.
Eagle Eye.
Eagle Eye.
Eagle
yes.
Eye, bro. Oh my god.
See, I have watched a few things.
The
I
guillotine.
just don't remember
the computer was called the Guillotine Project, I think.
I think
it was like
so.
an AI taking over the whole country and made by like basically ransoming people.
Yeah.
It was insane, man.
Like,
okay, take the president down, and then okay, this guy's gonna go over now.
Yeah.
ChatGPT.
So yeah.
Exactly.
ChatGPT.
Literally, bro. We should cover Eagle Eye. Like Eagle Eye, I loved it because it just keep you in the air. You watch, like doesn't stop, no for a second, man.
Yeah, it's very
crazy.
suspenseful.
Yeah.
You have a bathroom break before the movie starts because you cannot look away.
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
Well,
so are you guys aware that the running time?
Go ahead.
Well, I was moving back to the movie as well. So are you guys aware that the current runtime of this movie, as you watch it today, is 96 minutes, but it actually had a 130-minute runtime.
That's what we watched.
So
That's what we
it's
watched.
actually
yeah.
25.
I remember this. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Ray. I do
Okay,
remember.
so basically, well, that would be very difficult because pretty much most of that footage was lost entirely.
Yeah, they lost footage.
But
So,
Miguel and I watched
basically-
137 minutes.
No, it was an hour and 30 minutes.
Yeah, hour and 36 minutes.
Oh, yeah, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm talking crap.
But it was originally 25 minutes
Sure.
longer. It had a lot more of the hell scenes in it. And they couldn't get it rated. The rating board would not rate it because those scenes were so disturbing.
I think Captain Chaos will thank.
Yes,
person.
and I saw like the scenes were gorish, but then like when they had those little scenes I cut, and I'm like, you know what, like this movie is gorish, but there's not enough of it for it to be like especially those flash scenes at the end, like you'll catch glimpses of it,
They should have made it
but they
longer.
didn't show it long enough. I was like,
Yep,
I just saw this is deep.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I was saying, Gio, Captain Chaos should thank this person because he saw it when you were 7? Imagine watching this version of the film when you're 7.
But that's why, like, I wouldn't mind it because I mean, I'm so like dead inside and disturbed that like that for me now is entertainment.
But that's now. That's now.
So if you Google
Yep.
if you Google Event Horizon lost scenes or deleted scenes, you can actually find a few of them online, and I'll get to why you can in a little bit. But basically, it was edited down to be able to be rated so that it could actually be released in cinemas. So known deleted scenes include a meeting between Weir and the people in charge of the mission as they discuss the Event Horizon. Some dialogue remained present in the theatrical trailer, but wasn't actually included in the movie. More backstory on Cooper and Justin, including stronger explanation of Justin entering the black hole. A deleted backstory of a relationship between Stark and Miller. Additional scenes explaining the gateway to hell, what the gateway to hell, the black hole is. Miller finding a tooth floating in the Event Horizon. A longer version of scene where Peters hallucinates that her son's mangled legs are covered in maggots. A scene where Weir hallucinates that Justin turns into his wife Claire. A bloodier version of Weir wife Claire's suicide. A longer version of the scene where Miller finds DJ's vivisected body with his guts on the table. And a longer version of the Visions from Hell scene during Miller's final fight with Weir, with more shots of the Event Horizon crew being tortured. The blood orgy video was also longer. That's the one that they view in the at the end of the logs in the cockpit. As Anderson was sometimes too busy filming other scenes, the second unit director, Vladimir Jean, filmed some parts of it. Real-life amputees were used for special effects scenes where Event Horizon crew members were mutilated, and pornographic film actors were hired to make sex scenes and rape scenes more realistic and graphic.
Yeah, what I heard, and I don't know if you guys have heard this, when they actually, you know how the films are made, when the films are made, they're actually viewed by a test audience and the studio, right? So what I heard was slightly different, right? I heard that when this happened, when they have the studio's execs and the test audience and they're watching this film, they're like, no, we're not going to release this crap, and they order them to cut 30 minutes out of the film because the test audience, it did not respond well to this film.
Yeah, well, they couldn't get it rated either.
Yeah,
because it was too violent and too much sex. So basically, now I'm not reading that from here, but my understanding of it, because I watched this on YouTube some years ago now, but apparently that the cut footage of the blood orgy that, it seems to be the bit that everybody's really interested in because it's gruesome and sexual. That was lost. And apparently it was found again in a salt mine in Czechoslovakia.
Holy crap.
I think that they tend to store footage in salt mines because the salt's supposed to reduce the decay of the celluloid.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently a lot of it was already decayed and they couldn't resurrect it. And then apparently South America, they found a full version on VHS, but it was in a pretty bad way as well. So they managed to extract some of the scenes from it, but it was pretty low quality. So they couldn't actually build a director's cut, although Anderson, the director, was keen on building a director's cut at one point. They just couldn't get the footage in decent enough quality to do it.
I will just say, can you imagine just like going to a salt cave and somebody finds this VHS and tape and they have no idea this is supposed to be like a movie? What the fuck?
It's not the first time that we actually bring accounts of like deleted scenes or things lost that are found on salt mines. It's not the first time because you were talking about Norseman, if I'm not mistaken, and you told me the same thing, but he found buried salt mine.
But he didn't explain why.
Yeah, can you imagine, dude? Like you just find these seeds, you pop it in your VHS. I just found this, and all of a sudden, eating arms and shit.
Yeah.
What the? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Fuck is this?
I feel like going to a salt mine, see what I can find.
Oh wow.
Hey, you imagine the video says sexual scene, and they pop it in.
Not quite what I was expecting.
Instant trauma for the kids, man.
I'm watching deleted scenes here. I'm watching deleted scenes as you guys talk. Actually,
oh wow! You know, curiosity killed the cat. You know that, right?
But the cat survived an
12
alien.
lives, buddy. I got 12 life buddies.
Listen, the movie was enough for me. All right,
12.
I'll go back to regular porn after it. Like I'm fine.
Yeah,
you're probably not gonna see porn the same way.
Oh wow! So, Miguel, you watched this film? Was it today for the first time?
Yeah, it was today for the first time.
Oh wow!
So he was today years
4 hours
old.
ago.
4 hours ago.
Today years old when I watched the movie from 1990. And again, I was always late to watch The Matrix the first time, like 4 years ago, the original.
Mm.
Boy, you live under a rock.
What is?
Listen, man, I'm always busy. Like,
I can't. I have to ask, right? Being that you just saw this film today, I just have. I'm very curious when someone just is so fresh into an IP. What was your first impression, man, watching this? Especially since you're not, you like sci-fi, but you don't typically follow sci-fi as much. And do you follow? I mean, do you like horror? I mean, what do you think about this when you watched it for the first time?
I typically don't watch horror because I'm kind of like you. I don't like to process those things. Like I know it happens in the world. It is what it is. But when I watch, especially a movie like this, knowing the things that I've been researching and looking at over the last few years, I can make the connection to things that are actually going on in technology and science. So that's an interesting aspect of it. So, but when I first saw it, my first initial thought, this is. If you ever played the video game, it's like it's Dead Space, but if you were like,
you jump out of your fucking.
If you were like Isaac on that spaceship, and you just, it's literally almost the same storyline where they end up in this abandoned ship that was taken over by these parasitic. It's but it's different in a way.
It kind of hooks on their heads, right?
No, it's just you just being around this marker, and the marker is like this like the gateway. They're attracted to it. These parasitic, I guess you could say, parasitic
Life form.
life forms, yeah. And they want to get back to it, but because they're trying to take this thing to study it, they feel like they have to attack. So they're really not bad. I know it seems bad.
Just defending
they're
itself.
just defending the marker, which is like they want to take it back to their homeland, right? So the story is kind of the same way. But I typically I don't really watch horror because I just don't like the whole severing arms, and I like to sleep at night.
Come on, man, that's the juicy stuff.
You know, it's like watching the movie gave me anxiety.
You prefer to watch the news and get it for real, huh?
No, I don't even watch the news. I just watch like I listen to like engineers and scientists, and I watch a lot of long form podcasts with people that talk about these things. So that's really where I get my. I don't really even watch the news. I don't see CNN. I don't Fox. I don't do any of that.
I watch Australian Mate News.
Australian Big News.
By the way, Ray, I heard that things are over there hopping.
Oh yes.
Point intended. Is that what you mean? Oh wow. Yeah, I always ask that question.
But the CGI was very, very good. The CGI was very good for the year.
Except for the watch. The watch didn't look particularly.
Captain Mill, like the actor's name. Yeah. I was telling him when I saw like the first opening scene, I'm like, damn, this looks really good. And then you see the things floating in space, and I'm like,
not
bro,
so good.
They cheesed out on this one, bro. They cheaped out on the CGI, but I get it. It's 1997. You know, it is what it is. I mean, if you look at like the Matrix the first time, and you're like, damn, the CGI is awesome. But just a couple years makes a big difference in technology. But yeah, when I saw the whole, I don't think has there been any movie that's actually gotten the gravity thing right?
I think that they did a good job with the magnetic boots, with like what they did on like The Expanse, kind of the same thing, right, Robert?
Oh yeah, and the movie Gravity was really good too when it comes to showing what.
I haven't watched it.
Well, I think I actually feel like, without stating it specifically, that they had gravity plate technology in the floors. Because remember, in the Event Horizon, which was 7 years old when they were on board it, she turned the gravity back on and everything went. Which seemed to me to make to function as I would expect it to. Nothing went. That's kind of weird. So I don't know that they got the gravity wrong per se. It's just that they didn't state specifically where there were gravity plates and where there weren't. But obviously they had that technology because they turned it back on because it was off, and they reactivated and everything fell.
Actually, I got a fun fact about that. It actually the same technology that runs the I'm not gonna say the gate, but the warp drive itself. They're now trying to test it where that same technology actually does the gravity. So it's not like a separate
that's what it is.
thing. Like in movies, we see it as but what they're actually testing now with this chemical compound that Bob Lazar is that actual piece of technology it does the gravity thing, and it also does the warp time thing.
Oh, that's interesting. What's the name of the type of engine that they were making that you and I have spoken before, Robert? The Kelvin.
Alcubierre drive is the warp drive. Alcubierre.
It's like we're gonna say where people coexist actually. Shafts like different things, and because it rotates one
gravitron pretty much.
Exactly. So I think that, and as long as you're in one of those cabins, you have gravity. If you get out of it, you're 0G again.
It kind of like that, but the way that they're testing it, you don't need to rotate.
Interesting.
Warp drive controls the gravity.
Interesting
for the ship.
Because I think that's one of the most biggest problems for like interstellar travel. Is
let me speak to the
you lose
drive.
bone mass the longer you're there.
Let me speak towards the Alcubierre drive. And the Alcubierre drive, I don't remember reading about gravity, right? So all the Alcubierre drive does, it actually folds space around you. So the ship technically doesn't even need to have your normal, engines running, because by folding space you move forward. And basically what the Alcubierre drive does, it creates a bubble around the entire ship. So you don't even need to have seatbelts, which is kind of like interesting thing about this technology. Alcubierre, he's a Mexican scientist. He's a very big Star Trek fan. So it's I find it really interesting that the one thing that always bothered me about the science fiction IPs, where it's like everybody's on the bridge, especially Star Trek. Everybody's on the bridge and no one has seatbelts. It is actually explained in his theory, where you don't really need, because you're not moving. You're standing.
There's no inertia to need to deal with.
Exactly.
But then in this movie, they talk about, well, if you're not in a pod, when the ship accelerates, your bones get crushed.
Yes.
So they actually talk about that in this movie.
What about the jelly injection?
Yeah.
What about the jelly injection in your spine? The jelly squashed.
That's kind of like what they did in The Expanse. Yeah. And it kind of makes sense, because in The Expanse, as well as in this film, remember, Event Horizon was the only ship that has the warp technology. Remember the Lewis and Clark, the one that they used to travel to Neptunes. They were using conventional propulsion systems, and that's the reason why they had to be in these pods, because the inertia will actually destroy you. And notice how they were filled in this liquid.
Yeah,
which
because
I like to think is
the acceleration is progressional, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think about this, and Ray, let me know if you agree with this. I think the issue on the acceleration, it's when it's time to stop, when the engines are reversed.
Not only stopping, it's going forward, because your body is at rest. Well, nothing is ever properly at rest because we're all orbiting things.
Yeah.
But your body is functionally at rest, and then you put an acceleration on it. The ship's going this way, and your body's resisting because of the conservation of angular momentum.
Mm-hmm.
So your body will be compressed before it starts moving at the same speed as the ship, and that is part of the problem. It's just like when you're leaving Earth, like on a rocket ship, you cop a certain number of G's as you're lifting off, because you're going away from the Earth, and you're being squished down as gravity becomes more effective on you, because you're going away from it. So you get the same thing with an accelerating ship, even out in space, that it's this change in movement. If it's not slow enough, then your body will be damaged, and you have to mitigate that somehow.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So it's acceleration and deceleration. They're basically the same thing. Your body is not speeding up quick enough, or your body's not slowing down quick enough. Just like if you leave something loose in the back of your car and you go to take off and it rolls to the back of the car because it's not moving as fast as the car is suddenly. And then you slam on the brakes and it comes flying forward.
Yes.
Because it's moving faster than your car is now, because you've slowed the car, but not the object within it.
Yep.
Now,
and that's the whole point of inertial dampening.
Your body always your body always retains the potential energy from the kinetic that pushes it forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, the maintaining angular momentum.
Even if you're sitting in. Okay, that's different. So explain angular momentum. Potential and kinetic energy.
Yeah, it's the conservation of angular momentum, which is a very well known physical property. Now I got to think of the proper way to explain it.
Because what I'm thinking, it's like when you're in a car and you're accelerating, you feel the acceleration. And then when you're at a constant speed, you feel like your body's not compressed anymore. You can move around in the car. But if all of a sudden the car were to stop, you would fly through the windshield.
Yeah.
Same concept.
So conservation of angular momentum is a physical property of a spinning system such as the spin remains constant unless it is acted upon by an external torque. Put another way, the speed of rotation is constant until as long as the net torque is zero. So basically it's Newton's third law. An object will maintain its movement until it's acted upon by an external force. But basically, we are undergoing angular momentum right now because we're on a spinning body, the Earth.
Yeah.
And our body at rest. I'm sitting here in a chair. I don't feel like I'm moving, and I don't feel like I want to move relative to everything around me because my angular momentum is the same as the planets. But the moment you act upon that, then your body has to catch up. Like if my chair suddenly accelerated towards the screen, and I didn't smash into the screen, but I was just moving forward, I would feel being pressed back into the chair because my body would take time to catch up to that speed increase. And that's basically the effect of acceleration.
And I just have to point out, if you're actually on the equator, sitting down, drinking Mai Tais, relaxing, just sitting on a chair, you're actually moving 1,037 miles per hour, and you're not feeling a thing. Just relative to the core of the Earth. Movement is always relative because, as I've said in our every time we have time travel without space travel, and I call bullshit on it, but basically you're orbiting the Earth. The Earth is orbiting the sun. The sun is orbiting the galaxy. The galaxy is moving through space. Yes.
So there's all movement going on that you are completely unaware of because your angular momentum is fixed to those movements. So you don't feel it.
It's really like, it puts you in perspective when you think about that, if you feel so insignificant. You're in the equator, you're sitting down, you're not feeling a thing, and you're moving more than 1,000 miles per hour, and you don't feel it. People don't realize that.
Well, there was all this talk about creating air travel where rather than spending a lot of money on jet fuel and things like that, you just have some sort of vehicle that just lifted off and just waited for the Earth to turn under it and then came back down again.
That would be awesome.
But the problem is the air pressure. Okay, so you've got all these air molecules and they're moving as well.
Yes.
Not always the same rotation as the Earth because we've got wind currents and storms and all that sort of stuff. But the air is a physical barrier for you to just go up and hang there. But if you could find a way to fix yourself in space above the core of the Earth, you could let the Earth rotate under you and then come back down again. But it's not physically possible because of the atmosphere.
Well, many people don't realize, but we are within a fluid, right? The best way that I can explain it is we are like fish. Fish are underwater and they move through the water, right? Obviously, the water is a lot thicker than air, but we are in a fluid. Air is fluid, and that's the reason why you can have airplanes take off, because they're traveling through that fluid. They're kind of like surfing the wave, per se. So, that also plays into this idea that you're talking about. If you're lift off, you're still inside that fluid, and that fluid is going to push you. So
exactly.
it would be kind of hard to kind of go through the fluid. And I say fluid. Imagine air is water. That's the best way that I can explain it. And we're moving through water.
Yeah.
You feel the air.
Well, to be slightly more accurate,
yes,
because scientists like to do that, it's the spread of the atoms, right? So in space, there's very few atoms, okay? So there's lots and lots of empty space and very few atoms. As you get closer and closer to the Earth, you get more and more atoms because our atmosphere doesn't just stop at some supposed height. They say the atmosphere goes all the way out to the moon. There's atoms of
What?
gas from the Earth all the way out to the moon, and this is sort of floating around, orbiting very, very
Interesting.
slowly. But as you get closer, as you come down towards the Earth, there's more and more atoms, more and more atoms, more and more atoms, until you actually hit something that looks
Concentration.
like atmosphere.
Mhm.
And once you hit something that looks like
Yeah.
atmosphere, it starts to cause friction because you're pushing these things aside, and that's why spacecraft burn up, and meteorites and asteroids and meteorites, they burn up as they enter the atmosphere, because there's more atoms and they're rubbing against those atoms, and that friction creates heat, and heat melts things, and that's why they burn up. So that's why you see spaceships having all these heat shields on the bottom, because when you come in at speed, you create a lot of heat because you're pushing through these atoms. And as you come down, there's more and more and more and more atoms. You think the atmosphere is a fixed concentration? No way. It gets thicker as it goes down. Right at sea level, it's the thickest. But at the top of the ocean, so atoms and gas, and then you get to water, okay? So water has a lot more structure in it than gas does. So the atoms are closer together. That's why it's harder to push through. You can feel it more. You can go like this and you can feel the air moving. You can feel the air move past your arm. You can actually feel it. You know it's there, right? You do that in a bath and it's splish splash, and it's a lot harder. The atoms are closer together. It's harder to push through them. And there's more attractive forces between the molecules of water, which means it's harder to push through, because you've got to push past those attractive forces that creates, like the meniscus on the top of the water, the surface barrier of water. So you start at the top of the water and the atoms are at a particular density. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but as you go deeper, they get closer and closer together. The pressure gets greater. And we know that because, you get to the bottom of the Marianas Trench and you've got to have a really, really specialized submarine, or it just goes crump and you're dead because of the pressure. Because there's all of these atoms piled on top of each other, and the pressure gets greater and greater. And every time there's more pressure, there's there's more structure. The atoms are closer together. And when you get them close enough together, it turns to ice and gets more structure and gets harder and gets closer together. So water turns to ice. Now, you might think that, how does that relate to like the planet? Okay, lava. Lava is a liquid. Lava is earth atoms that are spread out a bit more. And to do that, you provide heat to them. You heat something up, it tries to expand. The heat makes it expand. The atoms are moving more and it's expanding. And then you get liquid
It don't
lava,
matter.
right?
Plasma, solid, liquid, and gas.
Yeah, exactly. So they're getting closer and closer together. Now, when lava cools, it becomes rock, and that's got even more structure. And it's the atoms are closer together, and different types of rock have got greater and lesser mass, which means that the atoms are closer together. But the atoms get closer and closer together, and they get less and less energy, and they do less and less moving. And that's how it all comes together, and then you become something solid like rock. But also in the depths of space, there's very little heat, and nothing moves there either. There's a lot less movement there as well. So it's temperature and the closeness of the atoms.
Ray, you should look into this scientist called I don't know if you know him, but his name is Nassim Haramein. He's like he actually studies space.
Oh, nice.
Nassim Haramein?
Yeah, he studies space in a quantum level.
So he
explains that even though we see it, still 9% between the atoms on this table. So it comes to show you like how little it takes to make something, But I look into Nassim Haramein. He explains it to a level where I can't understand it. I know what he's talking about because I pick certain things. But if Ray were to look into it, he'd be like, oh shit, yeah, it's mind blowing, the shit that he talks about.
Yeah, well, I hadn't got to the final point, but even when you've got something solid like rock or our bodies or whatever you want to look at that's completely solid, there's still a lot of space between the molecules and the atoms, because they all have charges and they're all pushing each other away, and electrons are orbiting around the neutrons and protons, and there's space in between that. and it all sits at a particular distance due to attractive forces, but there's still a whole lot of space. So the atoms really
That's what I
are
feel,
never in contact with each other. But you've still got solid rock, but there's still space between the atoms. Not that we can access it with our current technology, but who knows?
Yeah. But this is the kind of things that
Maybe that's the reason I feel so
mind blown.
And I like to think that this is the reason why you guys can come in and listen to us talk. I love those conversations. I really do. So
I love the scenes of this movie. I really do.
I can't. I gotta go home and watch some cartoons to like get it out of my mind.
what do you mean? There's unicorns and butterflies and rainbows in here, man.
Yep.
Go and watch Hellraiser.
Yeah, when
that'll,
he told me
that'll
we're
cool
gonna
your
watch.
palate.
Right, well, when he told me we're gonna watch Event Horizon, and I'm like, I don't know. Oh, it's a horror. I'm like horror sci-fi. Did Robert choose this?
Yep.
It was really, it threw me off guard because I'm like, I know Robert doesn't like dark movies.
I told you, man.
Yeah, I don't.
And then like for example, like I know Rob likes have happy ending movies, and I saw the ending. I'm like, this is not a happy. ending.
No. He's picky, bro. Like he might like Alien 1 and 2, but 3 and 4, no. Just because.
For the record, I do like everything in the Aliens IP. So, but yeah, it's I don't know. I mean,
funny, but I didn't know what Alien was until I went to Universal.
Really? Holy shit!
Oh wow!
I didn't know what Alien was until I went to Universal and I got on the ride, sit you down, and the chamber alien breaks out. You know,
I was like,
that.
I would have liked to. There was actually. I would yeah, future didn't get to say because when they got my pass, it had been like a year already that they took it off. I didn't get to enjoy it, bro. I wanted to do that.
I actually went to both. They were a lot of fun. And
I had the VR
guess
experience. Pretty good. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
You've done it, bro.
And you know the cool
right? The Oculus one.
Well, you know, I was going to speak to the Universal ride. You could actually feel the alien in the back of your neck, breathing. That was an experience.
Yeah, it feels like he's breathing in the back of your neck. Yeah.
Oh, should.
Yeah. Yeah. You just sit in a room and it's like a chamber, like a cryogenic chamber. Like it breaks, it cracks, and then it's like,
and you hear the things
like,
going
on. Then you just
over.
hear it moving around. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
it's
my
all
god,
dark.
dude.
You hear the
dude, I was a little kid. I was like 13 years old. I'm like, what the fuck?
Oh man, you guys been traumatized as kids then.
Why would he go? There you go, payback. I watched this 70 went to that right. Shit, bro.
My right outside of Universal is when I go to Disney and I ride Space Mountain. I could ride it like 8 times straight.
Love it, bro.
I don't care.
Space Mountain, bro.
Yeah.
Bro. Space Mountain, Robert? No, yeah, that's true. You can. Robert can.
I went in.
That's true.
Why can't
I went in there once when I didn't know what was going on, and the next thing I remember is opening my eyes and see security guards and my kids and my wife looking down on me.
Wow.
I lost consciousness and woke up in the floor.
Oh man.
What happened?
Go ahead, Ray. What was it?
No, I didn't have anything to say.
You frozen?
Hey.
Oh, okay.
Am I?
I went to a carnival recently.
I think you're
Surely not.
And let's just. Oh, okay. So my let's just say that my ex-girlfriend he liked like crazy the fireball right that spins and like not into extreme rides. And I'm like,
clean shot.
You know what, Miguel? Stop being a bitch.
Oh,
Stop being a bitch. And I went on it right after eating some Kentuck's Fried Chicken. I forgot the chicken was like on my throat, and she's like, "Babe, let's just keep going." And I'm like, she wants around. It's like an oval, and it's spins like a cage, and you're spinning along with us rotating,
God, like a hatchet.
like freely. And that was, dude. I'm not gonna lie, I'd be worse, but it was the most fun I ever had. Yeah, and I was
Wow.
like, you know, and I'm just like, yeah, spinning this cage, like dying.
Oh, that's fun, bro.
Oh, wow.
Anybody? I've
Is that
seen
the old?
Universal?
You,
And then we
you
had a
know
Philly
you're
steak
living
sandwich.
when you're nearly dead.
You could.
Huh?
You know you're living when you're nearly dead.
Now you know
It felt like pretty much. And it's funny enough because the
wow.
dizziest I ever got was actually riding the Gravitron.
the Gravitron.
Yeah, that got me more dizzy than the spinning, than the red ball, whatever thing that I rode.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I miss going to parks.
It was the Margate
Yeah,
Fair.
yeah. I just like going to Universal now for the Harry Potter experience. Oh, so
Butterbeer.
going
You're a
back.
wizard, Robert.
Uh,
That's what he was waiting for. You're a wizard, Robert.
oh wow!
But have you noticed who is in the horizon? Lucius Malfoy.
Oh yeah, Malfoy. He got
He's there.
he got the gutted.
Yep.
That scene was just that was
Extraction.
when I saw that scene, I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
It had been
There was
worse.
a lot of
let
that.
me portray for the people that have not seen the movie, even though it came out in 1997, but like 4 hours ago. So this was the exact way this guy was hanging, like so.
On meat hooks.
And then just like guts coming out of him. You notice that a lot of horror movies now they do that, right? There's always a scene with like somebody hanging from like a ceiling or some shit like this, and then like
They call that the Superman, the gutty Superman.
yeah, what the hell, dude?
So let me ask you this, Miguel. Did you? Can you say you like this movie? Can you say you watch it again, or this is a meh for you?
I watch this again.
Oh, okay.
It was a good movie. Don't get me. I'm not into horror. I don't like horror, and it's not that super happy. I'm more of a documentary person, so I don't really go out of my way to watch too many like fantasy or like sci-fi things, But yeah, if maybe if it came up someday, I'd be like, yeah, whatever, I'll watch it.
Documentary of the cartel, then.
I actually did watch that. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
But yeah. I don't think I would watch it again. I think one is enough for me. It just kind of brought back memories of me watching my friend play Dead Space. I'm like, oh, all right, no. I like to sleep soundly at night. Yeah.
You should play Alien Isolation, Miguel.
Yes. Go ahead.
I'm totally fine not playing that. Not.
And
I got freaked out with my friend. Okay. My cousin. Is it Penumbra?
Prey?
No,
I don't know. Maybe they know it.
Have you ever heard of Penumbra or Amnesia?
Amnesia.
Okay,
it's in Game Pass.
It's a
I haven't played it, but I've seen it.
Okay, so yeah, they're very similar games, right? You run around and there's these creatures, no weapons. You're just running around in the dark, right? And they're following you. Played it for about 10 minutes. Turned around, he just saw some eyes, and he was like, "Oh, I'm not playing this anymore." That's exactly how I felt.
F this.
Oh wow.
Like I watch other people play like those games, like on YouTube. I'll watch them play horror. Just like I like to see people's reaction. But me personally, like when I put myself in like playing a video game, I am the main character. So therefore, when something scares me, it's over the top. So I just don't.
So you
put
like to
myself in that.
vicariously freak out.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that because
Exactly.
that's exactly how I feel. That's exactly how I feel. So
Yeah, if I'm playing like some game like Assassin's Creed or something, people running around, like that's fine. I can watch that, and I like people playing it, and I'll play it myself. But when it comes to horror things, like even the simple Enderman game that came out a few years ago,
God.
that where he just like chases
Yeah.
you and he can no, I'm fine.
okay,
I feel
so
like I'm
we are at a point in the show where I'm going to ask Captain Chaos favorite question.
Favorite question? Favorite question?
Favorite question.
And thought in the middle, and then a bit of the edge thoughts too.
There you go. For all of you actually watching our YouTube, which you should subscribe, you can see the 3 questions. And we got to the last one. I'm not going to say a thing. Just go and subscribe and watch the video.
He always has that shit. First thoughts, last thoughts.
Exactly. So I
well,
guess
I
I
would
want to start with Miguel
watch
because
this
Miguel.
movie. Okay.
Huh? I
This
was
is
going to
Miguel
start with
with this
Miguel
movie, bro.
because
This is
he
Miguel with
just saw it
this
today.
movie.
Yeah, you. Okay, so Miguel, I'm not sure if you remember, but we always ask this question towards the end of our show, and basically what it is overall, and usually this question applies more so to people that have seen it a while ago, in a combination of all the times that you watch it all the way till today. But why I'm so interested in your point of view is because you don't have that gap. You watched it today, and that's all you have. So, what is your final thoughts, your perception on watching this movie today, which right now is very fresh because you watched it today. So, what are your last thoughts on this movie, including if you recommend it?
All right, so I will say, like, the only part, like we were talking earlier about the CGI, was in the beginning when things were floating in space. That's pretty much the only scene that you like, oh yeah, this is kind of outdated. It didn't seem like an outdated movie to me. Like to me, to watch that today probably came out a couple. For example, like I was telling you, I recently watched the last Matrix, which I think it's a Resurrection, and CGI is kind of very similar. Like, I mean, obviously it's but it's where you watch it and you think like Soylent Green, you know, which there was barely any CGI in that. That was a horrible example, but it wasn't bad where it gets away watching it. Would I recommend it if somebody likes kind of like alien sci-fi horror movies? If you want to see people having sex while dismembering themselves, yeah, totally, yeah, why not watch it? I wouldn't watch it myself again because that's kind of traumatizing. I like to keep my intercourse clean. So
the course.
so, but yeah, but watching it, it's so fresh in my mind. Yeah, like the movie doesn't get in the way like of the experience. But it's kind of interesting that they made it in a way where you can't pinpoint the main character. Like at first you think it's the doctor, but the doctor is like, yeah, which it's kind of a twist a little bit in the end, but it's almost like
it's a twist?
Yeah, it's I felt like it's kind of expected. Like it's almost like, okay, like the story itself is a little bit outdated, but not too much where it's like, you know,
yeah.
It
doesn't give myself away.
Yeah, today and things doesn't give away. It's not like 1997, probably 2020.
Nice.
Better than some of the movies that came out in 2015.
To me, the CGI definition is like it looks better than Smeagol and Lord of the Ring one. If it looks better than that, like CGI starts getting good.
Yeah.
Nice. Gio, can you give me your last thoughts, your perspective, especially since you were traumatized with this movie?
I was. Now I'm dead inside.
Is this the reason why you're dead inside now?
Nah, I mean, this is one of the many things that I exposed myself. I don't know why I do this at a young age. I would things that were not very nice to the mind. And after a while, you kind of get like, insensible to it. But it's not like I'm also like a horror fan, you know? It's not like, oh, there's a horror movie. I want to go and watch it, you know? Uh, uh, but I think it's a good plot, the movie, as hell. Like, as a kid, I watched this movie more than 5 or 6 times. Being 8 or 9, all the way to like 6 times. Like I used, it's not like I, but it's smartly done, and I think it was well made for it came out. And I mean, I thought we like 4 times. I was like, man, that actually she was scary. I think it's a good movie. I would recommend it to people. And I would get a girlfriend something, and I want to get for me and things, you know.
Oh wow.
That is kind of one thing I did want to bring up though, because I wonder why it wasn't so popular. Because if you look at like Alien now, when was the first?
79, I believe.
Yes.
1979. So this movie,
1979, right? Yeah, it's kind of strange because normally the major like the biggest portion of people that watch horror movies are horror. I don't know, but because messed around with.
I'm gonna tell you right now what did on the box office to give you an idea.
Or is it because it wasn't like
Alien was
because it's a sci-fi movie? It's not really like a real. Yeah.
So, Ray, I guess your last thoughts. You're probably close to me in when we both saw it at the theaters. We saw it multiple times since. What is your final thought on this movie? And if you can recall across all the multiple times that you watched it throughout your life.
Well, I mean, it just popped up out of nowhere from memory. There wasn't any big sort of advertising campaign for it or any big effort, which I think probably is where they fell down as far as recouping their investment in the movie, at least at the box office. According to Rotten Tomatoes, Event Horizon had a 32% approval rating based on 87 reviews and averaged 5 out of 10. So it wasn't reviewed very well by those people who are supposed to know about movies, but I don't necessarily agree with them.
Yeah.
And a cinema score of D+. So it wasn't very well appreciated at the cinema. But then when it got home released, it started gaining a lot of traction. So obviously more people were exposed to it on home release than was at the cinema. And then it started to get a cult following. So obviously it's not a movie with a wide appreciation base, but the people who do appreciate it and appreciate the hell out of it. For me personally, I was pretty overwhelmed the first time I saw it. And then, I've actually owned multiple copies of this on DVD. And just last night I rebought it on YouTube just so that I'd have a copy of it again. And the reason for that is that back in 2011, a friend of mine who's been on this podcast, Doc Joe Sweeney, I actually met him in 2011 through an acquaintance of ours. And he introduced me to this role-playing game that he was working on called Rapture: The End of Days. And basically, it was a role-playing game with the rules written around functioning like a horror movie. Now, I don't know how many of our listeners know what tabletop role playing is about. But basically, you generally take on the role of a single character within a story, and you have statistics, and you build that character up and make them the star of the story. They're like the main character or part of the ensemble cast. Much like this movie has an ensemble cast, and you can't really pick one person that's the main character you're supposed to follow. Role-playing games are much like that. You sit around the table with your role-playing friends, and you basically play through a story that one person has come up with, who's the game master, and you're playing the heroes, basically. So you're the main character. You want to build your character up. You want that character to get more powerful and get more good gear and achieve stuff. Now that's the normal paradigm for a role-playing game. However, that does not work in a horror movie, because in a horror movie, people are supposed to die regularly. As you've seen in this movie, lots of people died, and only a couple of people got away. And even one of the people yeah, I do think one of the people in the crew, well, he was an extra for the crew, but one of the stars of the show turned on the rest of them. He joined the bad guys. So these are sort of the paradigms of horror storytelling, where look, many go in, few come out. And the few that come out are the survivalists, the ones that manage to either luck or by good judgment, or just hunkering down and surviving, they manage to get through. And this is a paradigm that doesn't work in normal role playing. So what my friend Doc Joe did was he wrote a set of rules that function specifically for horror. So instead of getting XP for beating up monsters or whatever you do in a normal role-playing game, you get XP for dying in this game. But you have to
damn.
Yeah, but you have to die in a way that pushes the story forward, because it's what's called narrative role-playing. So you're creating a story with your friends. You're not playing a character. It's more sort of holistic in its approach. And I didn't get it the first time I played it, and I was really bummed out when my character died. But then I felt, because he didn't explain it to me, but when I became very keen on this game and I started writing adventures for it and running them at cons and stuff like that, I would explain I would give context. I would explain how the game's supposed to be played so you would enjoy it. And once people realized they weren't supposed to hang on to their characters, they would start doing the wacky things that you get happening in horror movies, like going off and finding out what that creaky noise was in the back shed, and all that sort of stuff that people do to get their asses killed in horror movies. And even to the point where it's quite normal and functional for somebody playing a character in Rapture to actually poison the rest of the group, or be secretly working for the evil or whatever. And I actually had one guy that would come and play this game at every single con that I ran it at in Sydney, and he would say, "I've got this really cool idea," and I'm like, "Yep, sure, we'll run with it. You can be a bad guy, you can turn on the whole party, that's fine." And it works because it's horror. It's not meant to be, like everybody working together to achieve a goal. It's everything falling apart and people dying all over the place like they do in a horror game, in a horror movie. So you have a horror game. And once you get used to that paradigm, you really enjoy it and you start having fun with it. And people would play through 3 or 4 different characters. So you'd have an ensemble cast of maybe, so if you had 3 people playing, you'd have 12. You'd have 9 or 12 people in the ensemble cast, like the crew of a ship, or people stuck in a basement, or however the setup of the story was. And then you'd pick out of that group of this guy's an engineer, this guy does this guy does that. You pick one of them and you play that one until it dies or goes crazy, because you can go crazy in horror movies as well. And then you'd swap to a new one, and you take one of the other extras, which is ones that aren't focused on, and then play that one. So if you think about Alien, Ripley really isn't front and center until the alien starts running around. She pops up a few times and says, "Oh, this is a smart thing to do," when everybody ignores her. And that's all you get from her until the shit starts going down and she's one of the only ones surviving. And it's exactly the same sort of thing in this game, where you play a character, it dies, you move on to the next one. But if that character died in a meaningful way that pushed the story forward, your next character is slightly improved. And therefore you're a bit stronger. And this is the way you gain experience, through dying. But this is a great fun game. I'm going to get you guys to play it on the stream and on the pod, and you get to experience it and find out what that's like. I'll run that for you at some point in the future. I don't know exactly when. But the reason why I'm telling you all of this is because when I started playing this game, I went, well, are there any movies that are functionally like this game? Because it's theological sci-fi horror, which is theological meaning that it follows the tenets of the Bible in the setup, like the rapture is stated in the Bible and what happens. Sci-fi, obviously, and horror. So putting those three things together, is there any movies that function in that fashion? And the immediate thought went straight to Event Horizon.
Yeah.
Hell, with like demons and people being massacred and all that sort of stuff. Sci-fi and horror. It's right there. And this movie functions almost entirely like a game of Rapture, to the point where you could play. I could write. If the people who were playing it hadn't seen this movie, I could write this movie as a game of Rapture and have people play it and have the Dr. Weird person turn on them at a certain point. It's functionally exactly like a game of Rapture, and that's why I really appreciate this movie.
Yeah, I'm dying to get Gio into a role-playing game. I really try, but when it's like just the DM and the player, it's not the same thing as having an entire team.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe next time you guys are in town, you and Miguel, we could do a game so you guys can experience it. I know
I'm down
because she loves those games.
I would love some role playing, man. But we're talking about BDSM, right?
And I don't. By the way, just so, I know I keep bringing up Dead Space, but if you guys ever read, because I went deep into the game, not playing it, but just watching it. If you read the way that the writer wrote it, his inspirations, I think that this movie is probably listed on there, because even Isaac, the whole thing that he's doing is that he landed on this ship because his wife used to work on the ship, and she died on it. So he sees the same hallucinations of his wife getting like killed and things like that, and like it's almost like Halo, where you have the computer talking to you all the time. Yeah. He sees hallucinations of her talking to him, but it's only in his head. It makes you very delusional. So I wouldn't be surprised if the inspiration for Dead Space was at least in part of it this movie.
I actually watched a documentary of how it was made. The guy worked his ass off to make sure that scares the heck out of you.
Yeah,
like he put the work into that. Like that game, man, like it'll make you jump. Oh my god.
So
Rob's gonna go play Dead Space.
Trust me. He won.
But not by himself.
My final thoughts.
Fucking do it.
He won.
My final thoughts on this movie. We kind of went over it, and I kind of would be seconding the opinions of all of you right now. But the thing that I want to point out is the fact that this is one of those few movies that you don't pick a character, kind of like we implied all through our conversations. The main character is the crew, right? So I really love when movies do this, and especially me, that I have this tendency of picking a main character, and then that character better be alive by the end of the movie. I think that in part is the reason why I like this movie and why it confuses so many people as to why I like it. It's the fact that in a typical movie, you pick a character, or at least I pick a character, because we're talking about my perspective. And then at the end of the movie, if that character dies, then that movie sucks. This movie is different, and not many movies have done that. So even if I wanted to, I couldn't pick a main character. So therefore, the end of the movie is safe, because we have, if you have one character survive at the end, then I am a happy camper. We have two surviving the end of this movie. But that's just my semantics as to why trying to explain why, why this movie, why you like this movie. The other reason why is the fact that I like I said before, and I said in the episode on aliens, I like when there's a lot of genre mixed with sci-fi. More genre, the better. And this actually, you know how Aliens is sci-fi thriller. There's I don't know that I want to call it thriller and horror, although it's bordering there. This one is actually sci-fi horror and a thriller. This is three things together. It could have been, like the sexualized if we have more of that part. But if you watch the movie that we watched, obviously, if you don't go and look for the deleted scenes, then you only get glimpses. So technically you don't see none of this. So it is a sci-fi horror thriller, and I love when they do this in film. And so there's two things there that I love is the fact that you can't pick a specific character because the entire crew is the character, and this is a multiple genre film. The movie was, again, I would echo Ray and by extension Miguel and Captain Chaos when I say that this film was a little traumatizing at the beginning. Obviously, I was giddy and excited because when I was watching this film, I remember how Aliens did this, and so that's why I wasn't too turned off by it when I was watching it for the first time. So every other rewatch that I have seen, um, I kind of agree with Miguel when he says this movie keeps it fresh. Aside from a couple, scenes, the movie looks like it was made in 2010. So the movie was enjoyable because of that aspect of it. So my final thought is if you like horror sci-fi genre, this is going to be one of your favorites. If you don't, if you just like sci-fi and you're like me that don't like horror, although you can hear Captain Chaos says, he calls bullshit on that. If you like just sci-fi and you don't like horror, you have here Miguel here. He doesn't like horror as well, and he enjoyed the movie. You might not want to watch it a second time, but you would definitely enjoy this film. Now, if you do, I welcome you to reach out to us, watch this film, and let me know what happened to you. What was your perception, especially if you don't like horror after watching this film. So that's my final thought.
And for the record, I think that they would have killed Doctor Weir if they would have just throw a bunch of isopropyl alcohol at him with all those cuts.
I do have one tidbit to add to it because remember when we started the I have one tidbit to add to because remember we started the conversation with like the ending of the movie, right, where she goes and she's being saved on the ship, right, from this police, and she sees Dr. Weird again.
Yeah.
Dr. Weird working on this project on Earth. Was he ever on the spaceship when it took off through this portal?
No,
they don't disclose that. They don't disclose that
because he's always been obsessed with it.
He built a ship. He built a ship and sent it on its way, but he was not on the ship when it disappeared.
But I think here's my only take before final thoughts. I give my initial thoughts. These are my final thoughts now. The final thoughts. But I think that it was not Dr. Weir alone acting like he was acting. I think that was also the effect of the ship on him. And hence what I mentioned, that the organism of the machine works like a hive. When you think about that, each individual doesn't act independently. They act from the mother brain, making decisions for them, to put it some way. So you will hear his it was not Dr. It was actually the ship. And it begs the question, like, since he was the one that created and sent it on its way, but he was really like he always showed that thirst and interest to be there and stay in on the ship. Why would we use the quote to open the show today? Maybe he's like he got separated, but he could not let go of that because he already got the effect of it on him. So he was longing to go back to the source.
You have a really good point, right? And I want to speak to that. If you remember, what was his name? The younger kid in this film, Justin.
Justin.
Okay. So
Baby bear, come back.
Baby bear.
Baby bear.
If we go to the scene where he is in the airlock, and you remember what he was saying at this point, where he was talking, like, if you seen what I seen, you wouldn't want to stop me or whatever. So we and I gotta mention this because you have a point, Gio, when you said that, because we can clearly see when the entity leaves Justin's mind that he says, "What am I doing
He
here?
has to let me let in.
Let me in. I don't want to die." And just a few minutes earlier, he wanted to go out because if you've seen what I seen, you don't want to be here. So it is very clear that this entity possesses your brain. And I think this is exactly what happened to Dr. Weird.
Well, Dr. Weir had a strong emotional connection to the ship because, as I said earlier, he was married to his work. And that's why his wife committed suicide, because she was just, he just ignored her and she got all depressed and gave up. But, he had the loss of his wife and how he felt responsible for that. But he was married to this ship and he built it and sent it on its way and it disappeared. And, it was a big hole in his life. And it came back and he wanted to know why. And once he got back to it, it was like being reunited with a lost lover, and he didn't want to leave it again. And then the ship got into his head and went, okay, I can use that. And turned him basically against everyone else.
Yeah.
Because they said, fuck this ship. And he went, well, no, it's mine. You're not doing that.
How the ship played around with
basically you could say that, in other words, he had some kind of emotional attachment to the ship, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I would like to close it to saying that Dr. Weir was like with the ship, like, I want to explore you again, little by little. I want to feel every inch of your lower decks. I want to touch every little tank of oxygen.
Let me get those bleeding nipples.
Yes.
Yep, those scrubbers, those painful scrubbers.
Yeah, the scrubbers, those damn scrubbers.
Oh God.
So I guess that concludes the final thoughts, and we can move on to our last segment.
The final thoughts. You can go, Ray.
Triple
Take
final
it away.
thoughts.
Triple final thoughts. Triple final
Well,
thoughts.
as I've
final
mentioned,
thoughts.
Yeah, but this is the science behind SciFi, so we're past final thoughts. We're finalized the final thoughts. So, as I mentioned, I feel like you can tell the difference between a movie that's had a really good scientific advisor for the plot and the writers, and ones that the writers have just made shit up. And I do feel that this one falls in the first camp, where it really hung together. You could kind of feel like everything that they were saying and their processes within the Lewis and Clark and all the things that they were doing felt really grounded. It felt like it made sense. And, hauntings and horror visions aside, they were all trying to do sensible things. We've got 20 hours of oxygen left. We've got to get the ship repaired. We've got to save as much of the vital gases as we can, and then repressurize the ship. And and we move the scrubbers over to this ship because the scrubbers are dead on the event horizon, because CO2 is a very dangerous thing in space. CO2 kills if you get trapped in a spaceship for any significant amount of time. For those who aren't very cognizant of the biology of breathing, you basically, humans need to take in oxygen and they release CO2. But a buildup of CO2 in the atmosphere, because you're breathing in oxygen and producing a lot of CO2, can then start to affect your ability to take up more oxygen. And even if you've got oxygen, too much CO2 will start to cloud your judgment, and eventually it'll poison you, which is why you breathe it out in the first place, because you don't want it in your body. So having a buildup of CO2 is really bad. So this is why they have these devices called CO2 scrubbers, which chemically bind the CO2 out of the air and reduce the amount of it that's there. So if these things aren't working, the CO2 will build up and you'll eventually get poisoned, which is why they said they had 20 hours of functional air left, and then the CO2 would be so high that it would kill them. So that gives you the ticking clock, which is a mainstay in stories to push the plot along. You've got X amount of time to achieve what you need to achieve, not as long as you'd like. So that produces a pressure in the story, and that's a commonly used trope for ramping up the threat of just the general situation. So I do feel that this movie really spent the time thinking about how things should function in space, and I couldn't really pick many holes in it. Perhaps the amount of time it took for the air to vacate the ship seemed a little bit long in that scene with the when the window at the front of the ship, which happened to be a cross, was fractured and the air was racing out.
Let me add something to your thought before you continue.
Yeah.
And just to reinforce what you're talking about, if you remember earlier in the show when I told you that I timed when Justin went out the airlock and then came back, and it was like, if you remember, I said 21 seconds. When I marked the point to from 0 all the way to 15 seconds, which is 12 to 15 seconds, the marker that I read that said that it's a point where you actually lose consciousness. It was really interesting to me that when that clock hit 15 seconds, that's when he fainted. So I just want to add to what you're saying, that it might not be 100% accurate based on what you said, how we're not counting. I wasn't counting on the part or the point where the airlock was being depressurized, but it shows that the writers had done an attempt to make the science real in this thing.
Yeah, to a point. They also ramped up the horror with all the bleeding, but
yes,
that was less accurate, but fit the horror theme, so they put it in. Yeah, I mean, in the end, you're making a film. You want it to feel realistic, but it still has to, achieve its goal as scaring people with horror. So I can understand why they did that. I don't hold that against them. But I mean, it really felt like this story was grounded in the way that they executed it. The special effects for the year were very good. The only one that really bothered me was the watch floating in 0G. It just the light didn't hit it properly. But other than that, I really didn't see any of the CGI was particularly off point. So yeah, I mean, I think they did a really good job with this movie as far as the basics of space travel and what it might be like. Go finding a derelict ship and going on board it and dealing with these things. And of course, you've got this list of ideas here. I don't know if you want to skip through those quickly. I did notice they were using a lot of pad screens, which is, that came from originally from 2001: A Space Odyssey, but it was probably on the cusp of where they started using them in the Star Trek TV shows. And of course, all that sort of thing was coming into play in the early 2000s with the iPads and the Samsung tablets and things like that. So it was just before that became a reality for us as consumers. So I think it was quite on point there as well.
Yeah, I find that really interesting too. It's just on the borderline of becoming a reality. Let me go through the points real quick. I think we kind of talked about those. This movie talks or deals with the FTL drive, or the faster than light travel. The Event Horizon was the first ship in this reality that had it was equipped with a gravity drive, and the gravity drive allows it to have faster than light travel. Now, the way that it was explained on this film, and again, I briefly talked about it earlier, is the gravity drive works by creating a black hole that in turn helps create a tunnel between 2 points in space, so the ship can actually travel through to the other side without actually traveling. So basically, it is a way to superimpose two different locations into one location, where you basically don't even travel at all. It's you just move on from point A to point B.
Traveling without moving, like in June.
Yeah. So I find that really interesting, because at the time we didn't know too much about that how that would work. I have actually read a lot of research concerning using what it is not using a black hole as a tunnel, which is still very, very interesting to me, because the more description, the better description that you see on every time you look for black holes, you see the description that no one can enter after the event horizon. You become, you start becoming spaghetti, right? So you stretch all the way into infinity. But then you start thinking about the white holes. And if you're not familiar with a white hole, this is the opposite to a black hole. Black hole, nothing escape past event horizon. On a black hole, nothing can enter past the whatever supposedly event horizon is.
You mean a white hole? You said a black hole twice.
Oh, a white hole, sorry. So the theory about this tunnel, it's basically using a black hole as an entry point and a white hole as an point of where you
Exit.
an exit point, which I find very, very interesting. But there's a lot of conflicting theories where there's still it's science, right? You have one side that acknowledges the existence of a white hole, while the other ones, they're on the fence. They need more proof. They need more mathematical. This is all equations right now. This is all like theory. So that also plays into faster than travel light. Now they also plays into the quantum mechanics theory, where 2 points on a quantum particle are intertwined, to where you could use it for faster than light travel as an FTL drive. This could also be a way, in theory, to travel from point A to point B without traveling. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because this was not a concept that was known, or at least to the masses. I know it was known to the scientific community, because this theory has been in circulation for quite a while now, but it wasn't known to the masses. And I find that, while I have my reservations using a black hole and a white hole as a way of travel, because of, no one wants to die when they enter the black hole. It seems to me like the quantum mechanics offers somewhat the safer avenue for FTL, which, again, we don't know much about quantum mechanics yet. So that's still on the plate to be discovered. They also talk about interdimensional travel. This is the ability for an X-dimensional being to travel to another dimension. It could be higher or lower. I also find that really fascinating that this was explored in this movie. And it's really one of those things that really interests me, especially, you can hear exactly me and Gio talk about this in our episode on Arrival. But they mention it. I don't think that they had the know-how back then to kind of explain it in more detail. And definitely we did not have the Tesseract example back then to kind of explain what, but the idea is a higher dimensional being can exist. It could exist in a lower dimensional being, but it will not be seen for those lower dimensional beings as the whole entity. You can only see a fraction of that entity. This example was explained best if you look at the video from and escape my mind. My favorite, Gio is your favorite too, scientist from
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
From the his teacher.
Neil deGrasse Tyson, bro.
From the 70s.
Oh, Carl Sagan, bro. Carl Sagan.
So he actually explained.
Love the original Cosmos is from him. Amazing.
Exactly. So yeah, we did the Cosmos too. He explained how if you can imagine two-dimensional people, living in its two-dimensional world with its two-dimensional houses, and then all of a sudden you put an apple. All they're going to see is the circle part of it, because that's the part that is intersecting on their two-dimensional world. We are third-dimensional beings, and we can see the apple in his height and width and its total dimension. But two-dimensional beings can only see that the circumference of that apple, because that's what they are. So in the event horizon, it makes me wonder, they're traveling to another dimension. Is it lower, is it higher, or is it another dimension? I'm sorry?
Allow me to illustrate. I made the example that he did actually, which I love because it's so simple that it's easy to understand. But imagine like this is a square. They're two-dimensional. It's not a cube. This is a cube. This cube is gonna go into this dimension. When it does this, they're just seeing the tip of it.
Yeah.
In the two dimensions.
No, I know the theory.
So the same
yeah,
way.
It's the same thing. Like if you had an ant on this table and it would look at this, it couldn't see this. It just sees this wall, right? This. If you get this, and let's say you make the ant, then now you could travel from here.
Yeah, exactly.
A third dimension. Yeah.
And just like that, it changes into higher dimensions. Hence why like what do you call the cube? Oh my god. You know,
Tesseract?
the Tesseract, for example, it's just like upper and upper and upper. Yeah. Go
on. They sort of tease that out a little bit in Star Trek Deep Space Nine with the entities that live in the hyperspace tunnel.
Yes.
And basically they say that you've got the three dimensions, which is up, down, left, right, forward, back, and the fourth dimension is space time. And because the entities are a higher dimensional entity within that hyperspace tunnel, they can see time all of time at the same time rather than living through it moment by moment. They exist across all of space-time simultaneously.
I find that to be so fascinating because it is proven in science that space-time is a single thing. It's not space and time, it's space-time, right? So because we are third-dimensional beings, we can't fathom in our brain to separate, to see it as a single thing. We separate it because we're linear. We have a moment where we are born, and we have a moment when we died, and we can't really go back. So for us, when you say space-time, it doesn't compute.
We don't know.
But space-time is one thing. So that's why fourth dimensional and higher beings, they're not linear, they're circular. And I think we spoke about this on our episode on Arrival when I said that imagine you're a fourth dimensional being for a moment, right? You are going to go to Starbucks to get a brand new flavor of coffee. Before you get there, you already know how is it going to taste. And I also mentioned that to our third dimensional brain, it seems very sad because, for example, you have a girlfriend. Let's say, for example, you have a girlfriend and you're going to go on a trip and you're going to say, yeah, I'm going to miss you. And you're going to live on your ship, on your trip. And you're not going to have time to miss her because while you're away, you're also experiencing being with her. So it's very complex for me to explain it, and I hope
codependent.
No, but do you know what I'm talking about, right? You experience your death,
yeah,
and your birth at the same time.
Wherever you touch, This kind of gets into topics of spirituality. Like I said, look into Nassim Haramein because he has like math and theories about this. But yeah, it's scientifically proven that wherever we sit down, like on this chair, when I get up, atoms will remain on this chair that are from my body. So I wouldn't be surprised to me if we can't see it obviously because we are very like you said, like very three-dimensional eyes. We don't see past certain, what they would say in spirituality, like certain dimensions or stages of vibrations.
Dimensions.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I do think that space-time is going all across from us, even in this room right now. It's a room now, but what was it 20,000 years ago? What could it be in the future? You never know. Like it's like simultaneously the past and the future are happening at the same time.
Yep.
Yeah, and before you guys out there start saying, and Ray, you can correct me in what I'm about to say if if I say this wrong, but
keep that one.
Because before you say, okay, you could see the future, right? If you're a third dimensional being, well, there's a
Can you, Ray?
In my mind,
I'll get to that.
In my mind, there's a limitation, okay, for a fourth dimensional being. The limitation is the time that you were born and the time that you die. So you live in a circle from birth to death, from birth to death. And that's your limitation. Anything that happens outside that circle, you don't know. And that's kind of what we discussed in the Arrival when we had those questions about how they can tell the future, how far into the future they can see. But that's just my perception. Again, not a scientist, but it kind of makes sense in my head. Ray, call my
no. I'm not going to call that bullshit because I don't know any better on that particular point. I was going to say though that the phenomenon that some people experience of deja vu, where they feel like they've seen
that's a glitch in the Matrix.
Well, that's one possibility, but the other possibility is that we're getting glimpses of the fourth dimension.
Yes,
I've had experiences where I've been in a situation and I felt like I've dreamt it before. and it might be through dreams that our brain's actually accessing that information. But there was this one particular time I was in a share house in Canberra while I was going to university, and there was a conversation going on. I'm going, I've experienced this before, and after this guy says this thing, then I say this other thing, and being cognizant of it, I tried to stop myself saying it. I said it anyway.
Yes.
And I'm like, where's free will, dude?
Yes.
Where's free will on?
And it's an option. It shows an option.
Well, you could say, you know, destiny is set and you have no free will and you're just playing out your life as you're meant to. But then again, you could just be experiencing part of the future of yourself in the fourth dimension as we attempt to evolve into fourth dimensional beings, and you've got a glimpse of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that you don't have free will, it's just that you know what's going to happen because you're existing in more than one place at a time within your circuit.
Multiverse.
Yeah. And I strongly believe that, you know, if you are a fourth dimensional being, you could actually be the perfect time traveler within your circle. Because the problem or the issue that we have with time travel, aside from the point of landing in a complete different place than where you are because the Earth is rotating and the planets are rotating, but as a fourth dimensional being, you are very aware of everything that happens in the future and in the past. So if you want to change something, and that's this, you know, let's ignore the rotation of the planet and the movement through the galaxy. Let's ignore that for a moment. And most time travel, you know, IPs deal with the fact that you want to go back to a point in time and change it, so this X thing doesn't happen or happen, regardless of what, you know, what story you're watching. The problem is, we have no idea, and this is why it's called the butterfly effect. We have no idea what effects that change that you do will cause on the rest of humanity. One example in point, it could be someone going back and killing Hitler. That could be, although it was a horrible thing, that could cause a worse future for humanity.
Yes.
But we don't see that.
Yes.
We can't see that. But as a fourth dimensional being, that you're aware of everything that happens in your circle, you could have the advantage to know what to change. And it could be something as simple as moving a chair or changing the water on a plant. But we don't know, because those are minute things that only a fourth dimensional being could actually tell. And what the discussion was on our movie Arrival, and how they knew what to change and what to affect to change the change of events. So I always, and the reason, you know, this is the reason why I said it always fascinates me because of that. Because we're linear, we have no idea.
I'm changing the destiny.
Exactly. And again,
I'm changing the destiny.
even fourth dimensional things have the limitations. So I just wanted to add that.
I can only speak on that on like from things that I've seen spirituality, which I guess it kind of ties in like spirituality to explain the metaphysical, but it also breaks down to a sense of science, right? Like now we're trying to explain that spirituality with science,
the phenomenal,
right? Yeah,
the paranormal.
From what I understand, fourth dimensional beings can control their shape with photons, and they can travel in that dimension. Fifth dimensional beings are the ones that could time travel.
Yeah, true. Can you read it?
No, I can't read it. It's too
Put a
small.
big screen.
I'm partially blind. When people travel to the past,
when people
they worry about radically.
Go on.
Yeah, read it. Go ahead.
When people travel to the past, they worry about radically changing the present by doing something small. Few people think that they can radically change the future by doing something small in the present.
Yes. Because we are all time travels. We are all time travelers, all of us.
And that was a meme on our Discord.
Watch
So,
that.
lots of good memes on our Discord.
Join our Discord. Okay, so anything else to add in the science?
Join their Discord.
I just wanted
Join
to sort of
Join their Discord
join the
now.
Discord.
If not, you're gonna get one of these.
Yeah, one of these if you don't
Yeah.
join the Discord.
Yeah, don't get one of those. Don't recommend it.
Yeah.
It'll be
Degustipated.
called gutless.
Degustipated.
So I was just going to say that just going back quickly to the role-playing game I mentioned, Rapture: The End of Days, it's hard sci-fi. So actually the method of transport between star systems is gravity drive that Joe came up with, Doc Joe.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, it plays straight into these sorts of theories. And the other thing I was going to say was that they were looking at making a hole in space-time and passing through it so that they could go from the Sol system to Alpha Centauri in a day, and they ended up in tearing a hole in space-time and going into a different reality or dimension. So basically, they screwed it up. Their calculations didn't work.
But that is a wormhole or a warp travel way?
Well, they broke through to another reality, which may, have shorter distances equivalent.
Yes.
But other things were there that weren't so good.
Philadelphia experiment.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
It was a
I mean,
bigger
a lot of
version
these
the
series have been
Philadelphia
around for
experiment.
quite a long time.
Yeah. Let's get the ship to like transfer somewhere else in space-time, but we forgot about the human atoms that go along with it. So now they become part of the ship.
Well, weren't they running a smoke screen
Kinda.
that they were trying to make the ship invisible? It was an anti spotting experiment, but it was actually the teleportation that they were working on.
Nice.
Don't
They
you love it
fucked
when
that up severely, huh?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, don't recommend reappearing
that one up.
inside of a bulkhead. That's not good for you.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that the theories about gravity drive require you to be out of the gravitational field of the sun. So you need an area of low gravity, a certain threshold of low gravity before you can actually use a gravity drive. That's a theory that's used within the Rapture game that I mentioned as well. You actually have to travel to the Oort cloud before you can use gravity drive, because you've got to not have a competing gravity field that stuffs up all the calculations. Because if you get the calculations wrong, you go to the wrong place.
Oh yeah.
You could fly right through a star or bounce too close to a supernova, and that'd end your trip real quick, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah.
To quote Star Wars.
Oh wow. Nice. Okay, if you're actually watching our video on YouTube, we have a link to our Discord. All you have to do is scan it and join our Discord.
Yeah, we had seven people scanned it, and they're not even watching us live. It's great. 8 people now. Wow, that's great. I wonder who's been. Wow, we're getting hacked by the system as we speak.
Matrix
On a
fighting back.
pre-recorded.
It's the interdimensional beams,
Yeah,
from the
see-
Event Horizon.
See, they're scanning it in the future, and you're seeing it now
Exactly.
on your circuit.
That's it. It's proven. It's proven.
Some Australian shit right
The
there,
theory
man.
is true.
Well, yeah, I'm in the
spiders have
future.
QR codes.
I'm further along
Huh?
the curve than you guys. I'm in the future.
The kangaroos have QR code scanners in their pockets.
You know, they
We
say
gotta
that
put something in
kangaroos are squirrels that went to jail.
Oh wow. Nice. Okay, so again,
Final thoughts? Any final thoughts?
Thank you everybody for being on our show just one more time. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did talking about it. This is a movie that inspired a great conversation And Miguel, for all of our listeners that have not seen our previous episodes and see you for the first time, can you tell them a little bit about yourself and where they can find you?
My name is I produce rock, EDM music, not only for myself, my project Myiami, but also for other artists around locally in the area. If you want to find me, you could find me at my IG at Migs Angel, Miggz Angel. It's verified now officially as of yesterday. So if you see that check mark, the picture's a guy smoking a cigar. I literally wear the same thing every day. So this guy smoking. Put up to my portfolio there of work that I've done soundtracks for galleries that have worked with FIU. I've done visuals, which is kind of say for 3D artists, stuff like that. For so it's a you need for your needs, and yeah, it's I do anything audio pretty much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, for all of you out there, if you like to join our Patreon, we have a Patreon channel, and we're actually recording our pre-show. So you get to watch us on the pre-show. So if you're not on our Discord, all you have to do is scan that little bar that is the little QR code that is on the screen right now, and you can become a Patreon. For all of you are actually listening to our pod, you can find a link on our description. And if you don't want, to be a Patreon, but want to help us out, you can also buy us a coffee. All you have to do is scan that QR code on the screen, or if you're listening to our pod, you can just find that link in our description. And to reach out to us, join our Discord. The QR code is on the screen, or you can reach out to us on Twitter. And let's continue with this conversation. So again, thank you so much, everybody, for being with us one more time. We really had a blast recording this episode, and I hope that you really, really enjoy it as much as we did. And again, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We really appreciate you being with us, because without you, we wouldn't be here. Thank you so much, and see you next time.
Bye.